across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. There's so much to get into here. Thank you to Julie. She's back on Tuesday morning right here on Talk. So the ongoing conflict in Iran is escalating the cost of living crisis and security concerns. It's kind of reigniting the UK debate over the US versus EU alignment. Where are future best served? Accusations arose that Keir Starmer shamelessly used the crisis to attempt to reverse Brexit by suggesting the UK could virtually rejoin the European single market. We all know what he'd really like to do, but where should Britain's allegiance be? The US or the EU? On that note, President Trump has again threatened to withdraw the US from NATO, repeating his frustration that allies do not automatically join US military operations. The curious thing about that, of course, is that NATO is the US. They are the main bulk of NATO. It's a curious position, but we'll look at that in more detail. And the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, claims stopping investigations into non-crime hate incidents has allowed officers to solve more serious crimes. They only stopped them on Monday, didn't they? Since ending these incidents, investigations in December, the force has reportedly doubled its solved actual hate crimes. It's doubled something. It's doing better without having to knock on people's doors. That's the point. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. So, is the UK better at being in a partnership with the USA or the EU? Where is Britain's allegiance best served? Now, we already know what Donald Trump thinks of Keir Starmer.
This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Yeah, simple as that. And we know what Keir Starmer thinks about the EU.
When it comes to defence and security, energy, emissions and the economy, we need a stronger relationship with Europe.
Yeah. Well, there it is. Now, picture the scene. Think of it like this. You're at a kind of party, bit of a cocktail thing going on, clutching a warm glass of Blue Nun. And you are Britain. Britain at the party with the glass of vino, trying to decide which group to join. So on one side, you've got the EU. Think about this. Picture the scene. The EU. They're well-dressed. They're multilingual. They're arguing politely about regulations and cheese. It's the EU. On the other side of the room, you've got the USA. They're loud, they're confident, occasionally chaotic. Someone's definitely brought the fireworks, of course, to the US contingent. Now, the EU, and we know all of this, but let's reiterate, this is the way the argument goes, offers stability, sensibility, structure, a sort of comforting sense of shared rules and alignment. It's like joining a book club, being part of the EU, where everyone actually reads the book. It's all very admirable. It's just a little bit beige. Meanwhile, the US, and we know the US, led at times by figures as unpredictable as Trump, is more like the blockbuster franchise. It's messy, it's dramatic, but undeniably it is influential. And that's what you've got here in this kind of picture of the EU or the US. Now, the difference between the EU and the US is pretty darn dramatic. I mean, let's have a little bench test here. I'll raise you a Ronald Reagan.
While other countries cling to the stale past, here in America, we breathe life into dreams. We create the future, and the world follows us into tomorrow.
Yeah, beautiful stuff, great memories. How does that compare to another big EU leader? Here's Mandy Macron.
Competition from the United States of America through trade agreements that undermine our export interests, demand maximum concessions, and openly aim to weaken and subordinate Europe.
Oh, God. We are torn between continent and cousins, it seems. And we have to ask, where do we best thrive? Where do we best go? With the cautious consensus of the EU or the bold ambition of the slightly louder United States? In the end, I think the West, the US, wins on this. We know the world is an uncertain place. We know it's precarious. And we don't want just to work on the basis of, well, here's a nice set of neat and tidy rules and regulations and a few press releases that you can read out to your fellow countrymen over there in the EU. You want reach, you want power, and a friend that can turn up the volume when they need to. And we get that from the United States. 0344 499 1000. Where should Britain's allegiance be? The United States or the EU? Now, I know there are big arguments that would say, well, any country needs it everywhere. You'd have both every day of the week, wouldn't you? Every day of the week. But don't tell me that there isn't now a very firm line in the sand, because there is. So where do we as Brits find ourselves gravitating towards? What should or where will our future be best served? America or Europe? 0344 499 1000. Peter Barnes, political strategist, is with us. Peter, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Pedants out of there will have noticed a sort of minor error in what I just said. I said America or Europe. Of course, we are in Europe.
Yes, we are.
It's a continent.
Yep.
I should have said the EU.
Yep.
But it was the flow.
I guess, yeah.
The flow of my
you
words.
were in the zone. You were
I'm
going
in the
with
zone.
Yeah,
I've said
there.
the EU quite a lot.
Yeah,
all right?
Yes, yeah.
Stop having a go at me, Peter. You've only been here 30 seconds.
Well, you know, it's just my presence.
Indeed. No, of course, we played that little clip of Reagan there, and
Yep.
we remember back to those heady days of Thatcher and Reagan. I mean, this was an extraordinary relationship. It did sort of continue with, well, it took a bit of a break, although John Major was very, very friendly with George Bush.
Yes.
They were good mates, and I think they remain good mates.
I think they did, actually.
They did up until he died, didn't he? About a year ago?
A year and a half ago, I think it was.
Yeah, very, very precise, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know.
This is the man you want on your pop team, I'm telling you. But yes, that relationship, of course, with Blair, which originally with Bush Jr. and Clinton. And,
Macmillan and JFK. Macmillan basically coached JFK through the Bay of Pigs.
Of course.
It's like actually one of the most underrated moments of the special relationship.
It's a great point to raise as well. Only Peter Barnes can raise these kind of moments. This is great territory. So where is our future best served then? I mean, I know it's a fairly obvious question, and the answer, of course, to it is, you know, maybe a little more complex. But instinctively, what do you think?
It's not a debate. It's the United States. It's not even a debate to have. It's basically, do you want to survive or do you want to perish?
Yeah.
Because that is the deal on the table, realistically, because what America brings to the table isn't just, you know, the money. It is the industrial capacity. It is the what they call kinetic weight. It is the ability to make things blow up. It is also the tissue to be able to move troops and assets around the world with great ease. And it's also the fact that they have so much. The capabilities that they have are so advanced, as we've seen in the Iran war. It is not even a debate. If you think the European Union is the future of anything, please see a doctor. Yes. Because it is finished. It is 88% of the European economic area is in debt. It is absolutely out of control. You've got broke countries lending money that it doesn't have, and so when it all comes crumbling down, there is no money for a bailout. Yeah. The idea that this is the way that Britain should go is laughable. Keir Starmer has used this issue to kind of get Britain back into the European Union, and also, more importantly, it means he doesn't have to make decisions anymore. Yeah. It is the European Union that will make the decision and tell him what to do. That is what I think a lot of this is he doesn't know what to do. So you think if you go in a big group, you can use that as an excuse.
And there is this when you look at sort of EU leaders. It's like somebody opened a packet of them. You know, I mentioned it there at the beginning. It's like joining a book club. You know, there's a sort of a certain sensibleness, there's a stability, there's a comfort, there's a structure. They all sing from the same hymn sheet. There is groupthink off the scale.
Oh, yeah.
They love a press release. They love a spreadsheet. They like a few neat and tidy numbers. They never go off piece. They've got it all night. And there's something about that I find disturbing. But more disturbing, of course, I think our own leader. Well, no, I know our own leader would love to be amidst that.
Oh, yes, definitely.
That absolutely suits who he is.
Yes, because what the EU does is it confuses process with action. Yeah. So basically, it'll have the meetings, it'll do all the planning, but then we'll never actually do the thing it's supposed to do. This is the one thing that Donald Trump has actually transformed the world, is he's shown that you can do something. Yes. He's like sat behind the Resolute desk, the most powerful desk in the world, and said, I'm going to make things happen. And that is what it is. It is laughable that, you know, anybody thinks that the European Union is capable of doing anything, because when this crisis first started, they had an emergency meeting on the following Monday, 3 days after the event of the first day of the war. 3 days after. I mean, they wanted the weekend. In what world is that a serious player, you know, considering the fact that this is a huge... one of those moments in world history that we will remember, and they wanted to wait till Monday because they wanted the weekend. It is laughable.
So America will still, and you know, Trump is the president at the moment. He hasn't always been. He won't be in a few years' time. So regardless of who is there, you would still, I mean, because under Joe Biden it was looking a bit iffy, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, this thing...
Biden would have been a better EU leader.
Yes, yeah, because he believed in the kind of European kind of broad, everybody hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But the Biden administration and the Obama administration had been pressuring European leaders to get their house in order for a long time. This is not just Trump gone mad, no matter what anybody likes to say. This has been a long time coming, and if you listen to the people coming out of the State Department and the Foreign Office, they said, yes, we knew this was going to happen, because the way that Europe and the UK kind of just hollowed itself out on every single marker is embarrassing and concerning beyond belief.
Indeed, and considering the sort of breathtaking, jaw-dropping, bureaucratic nature of the EU. It's got not one but two parliaments. It's got God knows how many officials work within it. It's got a bunch of presidents. It's got all manner of characters that are in these high positions. And yet, when it comes to two things that spring to mind, one is Ukraine and one is COVID. I don't ever remember there being a sort of big EU response. You know, oh, here comes Ursula with a big, you know, announcement. No, that never happened. No one ever says that. No one waits for those moments. It doesn't have any kind of real teeth in that respect.
Yeah,
so
because
we're living in a dangerous world where we need that voice.
Oh, yes, yeah, but we've always been in this dangerous world. The thing about the Iran crisis is it's actually kind of dropped the facade. This kind of rules-based order never existed, no matter what anybody wants to say. It was literally, who has the biggest gun wins, and it always will be like that. But the problem with the European Union is it is hid behind process because it doesn't want to make a decision, because most of the time it can't agree with itself, as we're seeing right now with the response to Iran. The idea that even most of the European nations can even agree on, you know, the right sandwiches to serve at the meeting is laughable, let alone actually make geopolitical decisions. If we put our foreign policy and defence policy in line with the European Union, leave the country, because it is not safe.
Let's but that doesn't mean there's no criticism of the United States, of course, because there often will be. Let's mention President Trump in the context of NATO here, because he threatened yesterday to withdraw the US from NATO, repeating his frustration that allies do not automatically join US military operations. Here he is on his first criticism of NATO just a couple of weeks ago.
We're always there for NATO. We're helping them win. Ukraine has many, it's got a notion in between us. Doesn't affect us, but we've helped them. It'd be interesting to see what country wouldn't help us with a very small endeavor, which is just keeping the Strait open.
Well, there's a couple of things I've got to pick him up on this. Firstly, he is NATO.
Yes.
It is largely the United States, talking about it like it's some third party over there. So there's that. But NATO, of course, is a defensive organisation. It isn't there as a body to join a war effort. Yeah,
so if you go back to Trump 1, you know, the original, the OG, this was what Trump was actually bringing up when he said, well, what is the point of NATO? This was actually a long-term conversation, because Trump has always been sceptical of NATO, because it's not living in the real world. It is no longer deterrence first, it is literal action first. Like, the idea that the Straits of Hormuz, for example, is closed is incorrect. It is open, but it is a trickle through. It is our toll booth, basically. So it is up to European nations to keep that open, to protect that lane. So therefore, you can't just act as a deterrent. That is an active role. The problem is NATO, as you say, is a defensive pact, but it's got to live in the real world. It's got to update itself. It's not the 1950s or 60s anymore. It's got to reimagine itself as an actual useful tool. And that's what it is. It is a tool. And unfortunately, European nations have, you know, rather dined out on World War II for a little too long. You know, 1945 was quite a while ago now.
Indeed, and he's kind of got it the wrong way around when he says, you know, they're not here for us. I mean, if America was invaded by a third country, you know, China or someone like that, then naturally NATO would step in, because of course that would be a NATO ally that was under attack. But of course that's not what's happened here with Iran. Iran is a war where America and Israel have gone to war. It's not about people coming to their rescue.
Yeah, this is the NATO charter, the constitution to which it governs itself. It's clause 5 is literally at a nation attacked.
Yeah.
So that you are right there. But then again, this is the point: is the idea of a NATO ally being invaded was for a very long time a slim thing. It wasn't actually an idea. It's only really since Russia walked into Ukraine with great ease that this is really back on the table. But again, it's all about NATO living in the real world, not having this kind of idea that peace is brought about by some kind of conference or anything. Peace is brought about, unfortunately, with hard power and with, I'm sad to say, death and a lot of blood, sweat and toil and money. Money is the big driver here, and unfortunately, we don't have any of it.
We ain't got none. We're out of it. Peter, stay with us. More to come from Peter Barnes. Over to you as well, particularly on that question of where our allegiances are best served. USA or the EU? What are your thoughts on that and why? We'll take some calls in just a bit as well. Loads more stories still to come. Keep it here. Coming up on 1:20. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Peter Barnes is with us. Peter, let's move to this story. We know it's been a bit of a grim time in certain parts of the country and the capital as well. Youths rioting, committing assaults, attacking police in South London. While this was going on, Mayor Sadiq Khan met police. Sir Mark Rowley met online and asked the UK ambassadors to challenge lies online claiming London is unsafe, fearing it could deter investors and visitors. He said this was in the past as well.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting one, really, because what Sadiq Khan is doing is hiding behind some rather top-line figures. He's hiding behind some rather clean, nice numbers, when the reality is most people here in the city do not feel that it is safe. And when you have these kind of TikToks and the videos coming out of things like the Clapham, the link-up thing, and all, you know, the life crime, all this kind of the narrative coming out of the city does not match up with the with what people are with the numbers. This is one of those lies, damn lies, and statistics problems. The interesting thing is we've already seen. I think it's China has put out knife warnings to their citizens who come here. So that is going to be a massive detractor, considering the fact that we are somewhat reliant on China for money and investment. And then there's so many other little things. If you speak to a lot of Americans, they're scared of coming here. And we joke around about America's got a gun problem. We have a knife crime problem out of control. But also it's things like shoplifting. It's things like petty small assaults and things like that. It is absolutely ridiculous for the Mayor of London to say that everything is A-OK and just do the classic, don't look here, look over there. Yeah. And that's what he's doing.
Do you, I mean, you're not from London.
No.
Like most people who seem to live in London, I say most, lots of people who work in London don't necessarily come from London. You are from somewhere north of Watford. Yes. We're aware of that. We're not allowed for security reasons to identify specifically where. Do you feel safe in the capital?
I have to admit, it depends where I am and at what time.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that when I've got my headphones in, I do turn it down. I don't. I'm a little more aware. I don't have my phone out. And
you don't walk around with your phone.
Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't do that anywhere.
Yeah, but I do think that is part of living in a city where you are. There's more people, so there's naturally going to be more crime. But I do feel that a lot of people are on edge now because of the level of violence in the crime. Sure. I do feel that it is very in your face. And this is the thing about this link up. It is the physical kind of number of people that are there. It is the idea of the police aren't about. Nobody seems to be in control and nobody seems to be punished. Yeah. That's the big thing. So if people aren't going to the police to report crimes, most of the numbers try to tell us, because what is the point? That seems to be the big thing. Look at the number of mobile phone snatches in Westminster, for example. I think it's 1 every 6 minutes. It's absolutely out of control, and it's little things like that make you think, is it safe being here? It shouldn't be a risk when your partner or your friends or whatever are out and about. You have to think, are they okay? That shouldn't be a thing.
I mean, it's a bit, for some, maybe it's intimidating. Maybe that intimidation doesn't manifest into anything, but it just feels like that. Of course, it can happen in any part of the country. I was listening to somebody the other day talking about getting on the tube train in London, and about 20 kids got on with balaclavas, every single one of them. Now, that's intimidating.
Oh,
right?
yes.
By any measure, that's intimidating. The kids are only dressing like that to be intimidating. They're not doing it for a giggle. They're not going to a fancy dress party. They are feeling that they want to intimidate.
Yeah, and I think that
kind of
comes
create
down,
a visual.
Oh, definitely. That comes down to the fact that there is no deterrent. There's no kind of anybody there that if something does happen, somebody will step in. That there is any sense of safety. And this is why the police being on the streets is really important, because it is that kind of the theatre of security, as they call it. It is the idea that you can see a policeman. They have to be visible. And I think that is the one thing we're missing from the city. And it comes down to the fact that we still have police officers policing tweets and not actually out on the streets. And I think that is the big problem. Obviously, the Met Commissioner has come out and said that we've been able to solve twice the amounts of crime. I thought that was interesting. I presume it went from 1 to 2. But apart from that, it's laughable that the police are putting out this narratives and Sadiq Khan and all the rest of it. When people don't feel safe, that is a bigger problem.
Yeah, indeed. And our last story is this. Reform's housing spokesman. This is the person that he made a statement, a man called Simon Dudley, about Grenfell, the Grenfell Tower, horrendous incident when many 72 people lost their lives in 2017. The comment he made, he said that when it comes to regulations around housing, was that it had gone too far the wrong way and added everyone dies in the end. Now, this was a very ridiculous thing to say. I think I'm right in saying, although I haven't got the information here, that he's since been fired for that. Is that right?
Yeah, he's been demoted as a spokesperson.
Right, should be at the top of the bullet points.
Yeah.
That's the story. He's, he's been fired.
Yeah, so there's 2 stories in this one. One is the kind of demotion of Simon Dudley, who is an expert in this field, by the way. He really does know his stuff.
Yes.
This is actually because Reform have not given sufficient media training where a proper politician would know not to make this mistake. Do you know, this is the amateur bit where Reform have really got to step up the game. The second part is he isn't incorrect in the point he's making about overregulation or about the fact that our kind of residential and commercial development and property development is absolutely choking the nation to death. 31% of housing developments were rejected last year because of the regulations, because they are adding so much pressure, so much time, money, and they're just making them non-viable for developers. You throw in the extra regulations because of the Grenfell tragedy, which of course was horrific, but you're putting that on developers. Developers will not take that risk. Therefore, prices in rents go up because you don't build the houses. Therefore, prices of everything else go up. Our economy is so linked to property development, you can't stifle it, and everything that has come since has stifled it. So unfortunately, because of his comments, he's really let the argument slip, actually, I'm afraid. But again, I do think this is Reform had to kind of let him go because it's Grenfell and because of the narrative that they're trying to fight, that they do care, that they're not these mean, nasty people and all the rest of it.
Well, I think, to me, that's the biggest story here. I mean, yes, of course, it is horrendous what he said. Naturally, nobody is going to agree with that unless you're some kind of supercharged sicko. But the response of Nigel Farage and Reform in firing him, because, of course, they're trying to shed a certain skin, Reform. You know, the kind of oddballs and weirdos and people who say, you know, bad and unpleasant and sometimes a bit iffy things have been previously welcomed into the party. I'm not saying they have, that's the accusation. And he's trying to rebrand. So it's not the first time I think they've got rid of somebody for something
there's been a couple, for sure.
But certainly, if this is the future for Farage, does it cause him as much of a problem as it does solve a problem? Because there are people who would say, look, I don't agree with what he said, but we're firing people now for their words. Reform are firing people for their words.
It's that. It is the double standard of saying, well, you know, what happened to hurty words and all the rest of it. This is a big problem. But the bigger thing is, you know, Simon Dudley is an expert in the field. He knows his stuff. And they're losing good people because they haven't got the party structure to train these people to go in front of cameras and in front of the media that is going to pick them up for every single mistake.
That's the point, isn't it? Because they need 650 people, and how many of them are going to be?
There will be people sat watching every
like
interview a councillor gives, a candidate gives. They will go through every social media post, and if they aren't on point, they're going to be, you know, it's going to be a headline news story. And that is that's the headache. So what they really have to do is, as a party, is get message discipline, have much more rigorous training, and you don't put people out in front of a camera who don't know what they're doing, because this is how they will be taken down if they're not careful.
Indeed. Peter, great to see you again. Have a lovely Easter. I bet you're working over it, aren't you?
I'm literally here in about 5 hours.
Are you really? You're back?
I'm back again.
Fantastic. We look forward to that. He is Peter Barnes, of course, political strategist, with us on the programme. But anything you've just heard there, by the way, do chip in. But if you are a born and bred Londoner, I think sometimes, you know how the media over the years, Peter, have gone, oh, it's too London-centric, it's too London-centric. You know, I always remind people, it is actually the capital. So you are going to get quite a lot of stuff going on.
It's like 9 million people here.
It's where the Parliament is, where the Royal Family is, where the Prime Minister lives. You're going to get all the big departments are here. You are always going to get a disproportionality. But it's almost the pendulum goes the kind of other way, in the sense that now it's like, oh, let's not talk about Londoners, it's too London-centric. Well, we would talk about Mancunians, we talk about Glaswegians. So I'm going to ask, if you are a born and bred Londoner, do you feel that your city is less safe than it used to be? Does it feel like that, or is it really no different at all? 0344 499 1000. Comments on that. And the big question we started with, where should Britain's allegiance be? The USA or the EU? There's a lot going on at the moment that is firing up that question in a more compelling and profound way than previously it might have done. Where is our allegiance best? Serve the UK or the USA or the EU? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This from Paul. England used to rule the world. Or we should say Great Britain rather than England used to rule the world. We aren't even in control of our own country, says Paul. Pete makes this point. Pete's in Desborough, who says America are loud and ambitious. That's what we all aspire to, isn't it? He's done the world a favour whilst they stood by and watched. NATO, where were they when a Russian missile hit Poland? NATO are done. All talks and no trousers, like Starmer and his cronies. Oh, it should be said that, Donald Trump is the head honcho, really, when it comes to NATO membership. The Americans are the most sort of powerful component of NATO. It's not a sort of external thing to America. But I take Pete's point. But where is our allegiance best served? Is it the United States or is it the EU? The ongoing conflict in Iran, of course, escalating the cost of living crisis, security concerns, which has reignited that UK debate over the US versus EU alignment. Accusations arose that Sir Keir Starmer shamelessly used the crisis to reverse Brexit by suggesting the UK could virtually rejoin the European single market. Let's have a listen to Keir Starmer speaking yesterday.
I'm not going to choose because I think it's in our interest to have a strong relationship with the US and with Europe. But I do think that when it comes to defence and security, energy, emissions and the economy, we need a stronger relationship with Europe. I actually think that will help strengthen our relationship with the US because successive presidents have said that Europe needs to do more on their defence and security. I've long argued that with European colleagues, that we should be doing more.
Well, where is our allegiance, though? It seems that Keir... I don't think I'm sort of reinventing the wheel by saying this. Mr Starmer would quite like to be back in the whole EU system. Is that better for this country, or is the United States where our allegiance should be? In a moment, we'll speak to the Chief Executive of the European Movement UK, Sir Nick Harvey. First, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, former Brexit Party MEP, is with us. Always good to see you. Good afternoon. Well, there's always been this. It's not a new argument to wonder, are we best partnered with the Americans or with those in the EU? We're not part of the EU anymore. But Mr Starmer there, Annunziata, yesterday, talking as if we kind of are, or at least should be.
I think he is sticking to his long-held belief that we should be back in the EU, that we should never have left, that the British people voting 17.4 million of them to leave the EU were all stupid and wrong. And he's stupid and wrong, that our interests are not served by being back in the EU. And what he's been saying is clearly rejoining huge elements of it by the back door without another referendum, without the British people having another say. He's lying to the British people using completely discredited, I assume he didn't quote where he was getting his figures from, but the only figures that show it have been completely discredited, that Brexit did huge harm. He said deep damage to our economy. That's just not true. There has been great harm to our economy. There was COVID, and there's a Labour government who's doing everything it can to destroy the economy, as far as one can tell. But the EU's share of world trade has fallen since the 2000s. It's gone from a quarter of world trade to around 1 in 6, from 25% to 17%. It is consistently falling. It is becoming less and less important as an economic bloc, despite having new members and various things like that should have boosted its trade power.
In the sense...
Meanwhile, our trade with them since Brexit has gone up. It's gone up by 70% since 2015. There has been no hit to our exports to the EU. We're actually doing pretty well, but the benefits we've had have been massive. That we have signed trade deals with India, with the US, with Australia, with the Pacific Rim countries that are growing, and unlike the EU, have actual potential to help our economy grow. And that should be where Keir Starmer's priorities lie. Our security, the only world power that exists in anything other than name, is the US. If we want security, we have to make sure we have a good relationship with them.
But that relationship does seem to be, I mean, it's a little precarious at the moment, isn't it? I mean, putting the he's no Winston Churchill comments aside, I mean, that's not all. There's, you know, everything with Iran. Donald Trump has, in every speech, it seems, when he's talked about the kind of the rest of the Western world, he seems to have singled out this country. The American
Absolutely.
president has the hump.
But rightly so, and he's not wrong. Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill. Keir Starmer's defence secretary has no idea how many frigates we've got. Keir Starmer is pretending that by selling or paying to get rid of the Chagos Islands, that's increasing our defence spending when it's weakening our defence. Keir Starmer has done everything to snub the US. He has not provided support when it was asked for. He is having to join the efforts against Iran because our own people, our own bases are under threat. But he has not done so in order to support the US's efforts. And if you snub the only world power that has similar interests to you, not surprisingly, they might take umbrage. And I think everything we've ever seen from Trump shows that he does that on a grand scale. And he says all sorts of things that he backtracks on, and we can never quite know where he stands. But this relationship is absolutely key. I mean, if we're going to try and rely on Spain instead, or, you know, most of the EU, we're never going to get anywhere. We need to get on with the EU, but we mustn't be run by the EU, either in defence or our economy. And what Keir Starmer has said, I mean, 95% of British businesses, and we will all know people who have small businesses, have no trade with the EU whatsoever. But with what Keir Starmer is suggesting, every single one of those would have to follow EU rules in which no British government has any say at all. We had very, very little before Brexit. We now have none. But no other trade deal in the world makes British businesses that only trade within our own country follow foreign rules. This is Keir Starmer handing away our sovereignty without us agreeing to it.
Annunziata, powerful stuff. Thank you for your time, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, former Brexit Party MEP. Let's speak with Sir Nick Harvey, Chief Executive of European Movement UK. Nick, good to have you on with us, sir. What do you heard? I mean, your job is done here, because Annunziata has just talked about booming trade. It's never been better. Everything is tickety-boo. Life outside the EU membership has only grown this country. So what is the point in anyone agitating or making an argument in any other shape or form?
Well, the argument I think Keir Starmer is using at the moment is that the security relationship we've believed we had with the Americans for decades is now looking under serious question. And Donald Trump's antics have certainly sent shockwaves over the past year throughout Europe. He has a point that Europe hasn't really done enough, and I'm including us here, in our own defence for many decades, and we really need to do more. And I think this is where Starmer is right in saying that we'll have to work closely with the other European countries to stand up a European pillar within NATO, let me stress. I don't want to turn our backs on the US. It's a very important strategic relationship that we have with them, but they are fed up that Europe hasn't done more. We need to do more together. And there are things, for example, defence procurement, that have never been dealt with by NATO. It doesn't do procurement. And if we want to get value for money, we are going to have to work with European defence industries with whom we are quite well integrated. But Keir Starmer is right, in my view, that we need a closer, more cooperative defence relationship with our neighbours.
In terms of America, I mean, we seem to have, or Keir Starmer certainly has upset the current American president. I know this argument about allegiances is, we more or less sort of have to take characters, individuals out of it, because the wider question about allegiance, it, of course, still stands regardless of who is running this country or the United States. We happen to have a very forthright character in the White House at the moment, Nick. He shoots from the hip. He speaks in a way like few others before him ever have. Sometimes he hits the bullseye. On occasions, he falls outside of what appears to be all logic. But we have somebody who speaks their mind. Europe seems to be almost like or the EU seems to be as I said at the beginning, it's like a group of bank managers getting together. It's all very beige and neat and tidy and very spreadsheety and press releasey. There's no sort of fireworks. There's no ambitions come out of Brussels.
I take your point. You certainly get fireworks from Donald Trump. He, as you say, he shoots from the hip. He seems very much to just say what's in his mind at that particular moment without really thinking a step or two ahead. I mean, yes, we're at a wobbly point in our relationship with him at the moment. But these things have happened before. Thatcher and Reagan fell out in quite a big way over the American invasion of Grenada. But the relationship with the Americans is deep and it's multi-layered and it will survive this. The king is going over there at really quite a sensitive and awkward moment, but if anyone can consolidate the relationship between the UK and the US, then the king is surely that person. The problem is that, Trump brought about this invasion into Iran. He didn't really sort of think through the consequences. He seems astonished that they're now holding the entire global oil market to hostage. But any strategic analysis of the Gulf should have told him this. Last year, we saw all his antics with tariffs, and he seemed genuinely shocked that that had turbulent effects on global markets. And now he's saying today, perhaps America will pull out of the defence relationship with Europe. I don't think he's quite thinking through the extent to which the Americans have facilities in the UK, in Germany, and other parts of Europe, which are what enable them to project global power. It's what enables them to try and do battle with the Russians in the Arctic, the Chinese, if they come over that way. It's what enables them to reach the Middle East. And I think that saner voices in Washington will be getting in his ear and saying, hold on, Mr. President, this is all very well, but there are consequences if you do this, and you need to think carefully about what those might be. In the meantime, we've got leaders from many different countries conferring today about what to do in the Gulf, and I think the UK can play a useful role calling people together and trying to find a solution that gets the Straits of Hormuz open again on a stable basis as soon as possible.
Do you think, just a wider point on EU membership, Nick, do you think a Labour government, I think it was Sadiq Khan that said the other day that a Labour government should go into the next election campaigning to rejoin the EU? I'm sure you would support that, but can you imagine it happening?
I think so, yes. I mean, I don't think they will break the red lines they set themselves for this Parliament, but those were for this Parliament. And I think that the proper democratic thing to do, were they to decide they wanted to do something different in the next Parliament, would be to say so at the election. And if they win the election, they've then got the mandate, potentially, I think, to have some exploratory talks with the EU, see what sort of terms might be available for the UK to accede to the EU. I think those would have to then probably come back to the public for approval in a referendum. I know the Brexit people say, it's a betrayal and so on, but it's 10 years since the public took a vote on this. In that time, between 6 and 7 million people who were on the register then have died. Same number, 6 to 7 million new voters have come on. I mean, we can't just indefinitely say that the view the country took one Thursday in June 2016 is sacrosanct forever. There's a limit to how long the votes of the dead can triumph over the votes of the young. And
But that's no argument, is it, on democracy? I mean, there was a point that nearly all Lib Dems died, but the party sort of carried on, didn't it, post-2015?
Yeah, but if we take the view that a referendum is a decision taken forever, you could say that about the 1975 referendum. I mean, we can't say that democratic decisions last forever. They just don't.
But this one has hardly up and running yet, isn't it? I mean, you want to change it around.
It's 10 years ago. And
10 years since the referendum, but of course since the agreements is not 10 years.
The economic rot set in immediately after the referendum. We started losing investment.
We're doing more trade with the EU.
No, not in any meaningful way. The transactional costs.
Our economy is growing greater than Germany.
Well, it's not growing fast enough. I think everybody's agreed that we need it to grow more. I mean, the point that Europe is losing its share of world trade seems to me to be self-evident. As the rest of the world gets wealthier and developing countries begin to modernize, the share which Europe or America or Britain actually has of world trade obviously goes down, and that's a good thing. But it doesn't mean the actual volumes are going down. And we've got a dirty, great big hole in our economy as a result of being on the outside of the single market. We still end up having to obey all its rules anyway. Anybody selling into the European market does have to. But we chose to become a rule taker the day we chose to cease being a rule maker. We're not talking about another referendum tomorrow. We're talking about one in, I don't know, 8 to 10 years' time. Okay. I think by then you've got a generational shift, and it would be time to have another look at the issue.
Well, it's interesting you say generational shift, which sort of suggests that people vote is that the way people vote is predicated on their kind of age rather than their wisdom.
I just think that if an entire generation has, if I can put it delicately,
died,
moved on, died, and there's another generation on, and the circumstances have changed, and the economy is ailing, and the global security picture is very different. Okay. A moment will come, and it's not now, but a moment will come when the nation will want to have another look at this issue. And you can't just say that the view we took one day in June 2016 lasts forever, or you could just say that the last general election lasts forever and we'll have this whacking great Labour majority forever, which I don't think is any better of an idea than saying that the Brexit decision was forever.
OK, on that point. Nick, great to have you on, sir. Have a lovely Easter. Thank you for your time. Here's Sir Nick Harvey, Chief Exec of the European Movement UK, former Lib Dem, former Lib Dem minister, former minister as well, Minister of State for the Armed Forces too. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. 10 to 2. You heard what he said. I mean, you might want to pick up on the wider point that it's inevitable at some point there'll be another referendum on the EU, and we'll go back in. And not to paraphrase too much of what Nick said, but a lot of the people that voted for Brexit are dead, so they don't count anymore. So let's bring it on and have another one. I don't think that misrepresents what he said there. But our allegiances, where should our sort of loyalty be? It was always under the whole Thatcher. I know we can't always hark back to the Thatcher thing, but it was very much like we deal with the European people, we deal with the EU, but our real allegiance, our cultural kind of connection, the common tongue and common language, all that stuff is with the States. Do you support that, or is the EU where it is at? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. This comes in from Gabby, who says, backdoor rejoin. We also need to remember that we are part of the CPTPP, which is the Trans-Pacific Trading Arrangements. Can't quite remember what the acronym fully stands for. It's a group of 12 countries where the population is bigger than the EU. We vote to leave the EU, respect the will of 17.4 million people, says Gabby. Let's go to MG in Staffordshire, who may have a different take on this. MG, how are you doing?
Hello, very well, thank you, Ian. How are you?
Very good, thank you. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, gosh, I've got quite a few, actually. I did live in France for a year as part of my university course, and I was quite shocked, actually, that when I was asked to pay for something in the supermarket, they asked me to use chip and pin, which I'd never used before, because at the time we were using signatures. And apparently they'd used that system for quite a while, so they were easily 11 years ahead of us. Easily, more than that, probably. And I've also spoken to friends who've travelled abroad, and they say that the road systems are made differently, the way they build roads are different. And I think there's so many things which we could learn from Europe. I'm not saying we should lose our own identity, but I do think if we are strong enough and secure enough as a country, and we have a good defence, and we increase the size of our military and so on, I think we would be able to help Trump if needed, if we wanted to go that way, and be able to support other countries. I don't feel as though we are strong enough.
So we should maybe rejoin the EU because they've got better chip and pin machines?
No, I think they're much more technologically advanced than us.
Do you think so?
Yes, in many ways.
I'm not sure. I think, there are certainly some great arguments about roads being better almost in any... I think they're better in Kuala Lumpur than they are here, to be fair. But I think technology, I think we play a pretty big part globally in tech. Although the chip and pin machine, I should say, 25 years ago I saw that being used in Australia, and I couldn't work out what the hell it was. And it was a quarter of a century before it got to our shores, I think. So you sense that there is... a modernness to the EU that is should be in our interest. Am I reading you right there? I don't want to misrepresent what you said.
No, I think we should go back in. I think we were well ahead many years ago in some things, but I think for most things we actually are becoming behind. I think we're suffering economically. I think we've got a lack of trade. We've changed our qualifications in schools, for example, so technology is a mixture of woodwork, needlework and whatever else, rather than being subjects in their own right. So we're slowly diminishing those skills, which other countries, as far as I'm aware, are still keeping trades like that going and skills like that going, and are still placing an emphasis on those things. I just feel that we could learn a lot. I'm not saying we should copy everything which Europe do, but I think we can learn a lot. And I think we need to find out more about what other people do, particularly as far as immigration is concerned as well. What are other countries doing which might be better than us? And then we'll strengthen ourselves as a country. Then we're in a much better position to do more, to work alongside the USA.
On that position, I mean, Keir Starmer could have written that for you, MG. But listen, it was a great argument in favour. That's the one that MG's advancing. Thank you very much for your call. Have a great weekend. Do you want to concur with that? Do you want to ferociously argue against that? 0344 499 1000. More calls and comments on the way. If you're born and bred in London, is it a safer place or less safe place than it was many years ago? How do you kind of conclude on that one? Sadiq Khan saying, yeah, it's perfectly fine here, and others saying, nope, nothing to see here, don't worry, Governor. Not sure that represents the views of most people. And the big question, where should Britain's allegiance be, the United States or the EU? You can voice note us on this number, 0344 499 1000. You can call us on that number too. Right now, the time 2 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back to the home of common sense. So much going on at this end. We're firing into an Easter weekend, of course, but it doesn't mean some pretty grim headlines stop coming our way. That ongoing conflict in Iran, escalating the cost of living and security concerns. Now, this is sort of reignited in a really powerful way, I'm sensing now. The UK debate over the US versus the EU alignment. Accusations have arisen that Sir Keir Starmer is shamelessly using the crisis in an attempt to more or less reverse Brexit by suggesting the UK could virtually rejoin the European single currency, the single market, I should say. That said, of course, there's another big powerhouse just down the way there called the United States. Where should Britain's allegiance be, the US or the EU? Also this afternoon, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has publicly backed North Sea drilling, creating a policy split with Energy Secretary Ed Miliband. Grab the popcorn, kids. Reeves has supported extraction from the planned Rosebank oil and Jackdaw gas fields, citing benefits for jobs and tax revenue. Her comments precede Miliband's final decision on those licences. A spoiler alert, they will go ahead. And the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has said that the force has doubled the number of real hate crimes that it had solved since he announced in December last year that his force would no longer investigate these incidents. So, guess what? They freed up coppers to do proper policing work, and it seems to be working. I mean, who'd have thought it? We'll have more on that story as well. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. I just want to bring you this as well. We talked about whether the capital city, whether you live there, been down there or up there, depending on where you live, whether it is safer than it used to be, and particularly if you've sort of grown up in London. What are you sensing? Sarah says, I'm a born and bred Londoner. I'm 51. I grew up in Battersea. God, man, I bet that looked a little different, didn't it, 50 years ago. Moved to Tooting at 20, that also looked different, and lived in Morden for the last 11 years. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I worry about her making it home without being sexually assaulted every single day. I have a 28-year-old son who went out into central London a couple of weeks ago, and I worried he'd be stabbed or mugged on the way home. When I was 9 years old, I used to get a bus to school and back on my own every day. No one worried I'd be attacked or my brother would be stabbed. You never saw a mask or a balaclava in the street. I first saw a man in Tooting wear a mask and balaclava walking down the road about 20 years ago, and I was shocked. Now it's normal. It is 100% more dangerous, and I don't feel safe, says Sarah. If you want to feed it, thank you, Sarah, for that. If you want to feed into that comment, 0344 499 1000. So let's go back to the President. President Trump again threatening to withdraw the US from NATO yesterday, repeating his frustration that allies do not automatically join US military operations. Here he is criticising NATO. This is just a few weeks ago.
We're always there for NATO. We're helping them when Ukraine has many, it's got a notion in between us. Doesn't affect us when we've helped them. It'd be interesting to see what country wouldn't help us with a very small endeavor, which is just keeping the Strait open.
Let's get a word from Mike Hewitt, former Pentagon official, ex-US Navy officer too. Mike, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hello, Ian. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you with us. Listen, I mean, educate me here a bit if you can. Donald Trump has consistently made this point, certainly over the last few weeks. Remember, in his first term back in 2016, there he was with Angela Merkel telling her, you got to set up to the plate. You got to throw in some more money. We're putting all the cash in. I thought that was a perfectly reasonable argument for Mr. Trump to have back then. Now, however, he's talking about NATO as if it's a sort of third party, when, of course, America are really the nuts and bolts of NATO. This is his own organisation, as it were.
Yeah, he's voicing a level of frustration, I believe, based on this Iran conflict, where he didn't ask NATO to join the war, but he certainly asked his allies that are in NATO to support his efforts to eliminate Iran's nuclear program, which was a clear and present danger and a global threat. So his frustration at NATO allies not allowing us to use their bases that we've established for decades in support of NATO, or even allowing us to fly through their airspace, which put young men and women from America in harm's way in this military campaign. So what I believe is that he is not going to leave NATO, but he's certainly looking for NATO to become more self-reliant.
Yeah, but of course it is a defensive organisation, right, as distinct from an offensive one. But I do agree with you. I thought the decision by the British government to, no, you can't use our bases. Half an hour later, they changed their mind. But that half an hour, OK, it was more than that, literally. But you take my point. It was crucial, right? It was crucial in terms of our relationship with the United States, and it was crucial for the endeavours of the American military.
That's exactly right. And again, I think what the president did last night in his address to the American people was restate the military campaign objectives, which was to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat to the world, eliminate their ability to project power and threaten the world stage through terrorism, eliminate their Navy, their Air Force. This is not about regime change. It's about eliminating the threat to the world. Now, what Iran is doing is threatening the world by holding the Straits of Hormuz hostage, which, as the president has outlined, impacts the NATO nations much more than it impacts the United States. So I believe he is, once again, trying to get NATO to be more realistic in what the global threats are. And the fact is, Iran was very close to a nuclear weapon. They demonstrated they could range London with a 4,000-kilometer ICBM, and they had every intention of achieving a weapon state. And they obviously have demonstrated that they had the ability and probably the desire to use it once they achieved it.
Give us some education here, if you would, Mike. I was under the impression that the nuclear capability of Iran had already been wiped out last year. So that was already, that box had already been ticked. What's the reality of that?
So Midnight Fury, the exercise last year, they took out the Iran nuclear program, eliminated their centrifuges, eliminated much of their physics packages and the things you need to build a nuclear weapon. What it didn't do was eliminate the highly enriched uranium that they had already created. And so in the negotiations since the attack last year with the Iranians, the president offered them a peaceful civil nuclear program. And they made it very clear they had every intention of restarting their weapons program. And because they already had enough highly enriched uranium that they just needed to re-enrich one more time, all they needed to do was rebuild some centrifuges and they could have easily achieved a weapon state. But the Iranians made it very clear to the world they had every intention of restarting their weapons program. That's what kicked into epic fury 30 days ago.
For those countries that didn't want to join in any shape or form what is happening in Iran. I mean, the UK did eventually allow those bases to be used, and I think there's some military intelligence assistance going on as well. But broadly speaking, there are countries out there, Spain being the obvious one, that want nothing to do with it. Is it fair enough, then, that Spain say, hang on a second, you know, this is not our war. Strait of Hormuz is, you know, it's a terrible thing that's happening. It's not for us to clear up this mess. It's for Israel, for the United States. What do you say to that?
One of the things that's fascinating about the alliance that's been created in the Middle East is you've got Saudi Arabia and Israel aligning with each other on seeking a peaceful, prosperous, commercially viable Middle East. And in many ways, what the president put together was an unbelievable alliance among the Sunni nations, the GCC, with Israel, Jordan, and Egypt. That in and of itself was an amazing accomplishment. They're all on the same side of this thing, which is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon and Iran must stop their proxy networks. The fact that Spain and NATO nations can decide whether or not that's important to them is really very short-sighted because Iran was a global threat. So what you're watching happen now is a very fractured leadership structure within Iran. We don't really know who's in charge. And I think one of the things that's not stated enough is you're watching an internal battle in Iran between the IRGC, which are the fanatical military elements, the standing army, which has been maintained intact, because as the president said, I'm not here to invade Iran, and I'm not here to make Iran defenseless to protect its own sovereignty. What we were out to do was eliminate their power projection and their terrorism on the global stage. And he's really achieved that. But what you're watching in Iran right now is a power struggle between what I consider to be the more rational, progressive leaders and the fanaticals. And this is really what we wanted to see, was the country take itself back after 47 years of a fanatical mullah who had ideologies to basically destroy the world.
But and that was, I guess, my confusion over this, because I understood the need to, to get back to that kind of 1979 kind of secular country, progressive, not dominated by extreme Islamism and all manner of other sort of crazy medieval diktats and rules and regulations, women's rights, equality, all of that stuff. What I'm sensing now, however, is that move, the Pahlavi kind of appetite, is not really being talked about at the moment. Who is this new administration? Because as far as I can see, the Supreme Leader is now the son of the previous Supreme Leader. The President is the same. The head of the judiciary is the same. Who are these new guys?
So there's a real internal struggle right now between progressives and the fanaticals. And we're watching it play out. It's really hard to say exactly who is leading the country right now. But what the president has seen is demonstrations that the group we are dealing with, and a lot of this is being done behind the scenes. You're not going to hear a lot about the negotiation. Everyone's out on the public stage with their rhetoric about no ceasefire. The president says the Iranians are at the bargaining table. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I think it's important to realize that David Cameron, Barack Obama, Gordon Brown, they bet on Iran through this nuclear deal becoming a rational nation. And unfortunately, that was a horrible bet.
Yeah.
And what they set into motion was a nuclear-armed fanatical mullah. So we had to eliminate that. I am confident that the vast majority of Shia and Persians in Iran want peace, they want stability, and they want to be part of the 21st century world order. And that's what we're really hoping to be achieved by this conflict.
We've been asking a wider question outside of this NATO discussion, Mike, about the UK's allegiance and where it is best served, whether it's the United States or the EU. I think probably about 100 times in the last hour I've referenced that incredible relationship with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. They would always have a tear in my eye every time I think about that. What great days they were. The world, it felt like the grown-ups were in the room. The world was, heading in the right direction. The wall came tumbling down. Capitalism was able to reign supreme unapologetically. It was never a bad thing. Life just changed and it felt rather magnificent. I know there's details behind the scenes, but broadly speaking, I'm sure you would more or less concur with that.
Absolutely. And I think in some ways the special relationship can survive any of these things. And unfortunately, Keir Starmer, I think in some ways is going back to a pre-Brexit conversation. But the reality is, just like drilling in the North Sea, what the UK needs to achieve and what the president has outlined is you need to have energy sovereignty. Energy sovereignty creates peaceful sovereignty.
Yep.
And whether you like it or not, the entirety of the EU has moved away from clean energy to abundant baseload power. That's what's underwriting Iran's benevolent influence right now in the region, is forcing you to worry about the price of oil. And this is really important to create your own stability and sovereignty. The United States wants to be the energy partner of the UK. So I think we're going to get there. And I think we're going to get there in a way that is very rational. But at the moment, you've got this very bifurcated conversation coming out of the UK between, do I go back to the EU? Do I remain partners with the US? I don't think you have to make that choice. You will always be the closest ally of the United States. We just have to work through what I consider to be some very poor leadership right now.
Yeah, absolutely no argument from me at this end on that. Mike, great to have you on, sir. Lovely to speak. He's Mike Hewitt, former Pentagon official, ex-US Navy officer. What a sensible voice on the whole story he was. Thank you to him. Let's go to David in Coventry on this very point. Our allegiance, the US or the EU. What are you thinking, David? Afternoon to you.
Hi, I'm coming at this from the point of view of where does our greatest threat, or do our greatest threats come from? And from that, you then work out where your best friends are, who you would want most to be your best friends. And quite frankly, the threats come from China, Russia, Islamic fundamentalism, Iran, potentially North Korea, etc., etc. And quite frankly, it's the EU and America are the difference between having a 22-stone, 20-year-old rugby prop forward have your back, or a 90-year-old grandmother have your back. And quite frankly, in a sticky situation, I know exactly who I would prefer to have my back and be looking after me.
It is kind of that, isn't it? And you made a really good point there. If you look at the Islamist threat that permeates around the world, I know there's no country that it doesn't affect it, perhaps in varying ways. But I think reasonably argue, David, that the EU have allowed this to grow and boil away and multiply and done very little about it because of sensitivities, because of their absolute fear that this sort of liberal elite from Brussels that permeates the governments of the EU, their thinking is just not in that gear, right? And as a result, they've taken their foot off the gas.
I would go quite so far. I would go much further than that. It's not that the EU have allowed it. The EU have positively encouraged it and facilitated it, as have the Uni Party in this country. And these people have behaved as total traitors to their own country.
Got it. Listen, it's a great call. David, thank you very much indeed. The US alliance or the EU alliance, which one are you running with? Where's our future best placed of those two? Maybe for differing reasons. I mean, certainly culturally and all the rest of it. There's no argument, is there? The United States is absolutely where we've got to be in bed with, to coin that phrase. 0344 499 1000. Some great comments from you. I'll do some messages as well in a second. And the other elements we've been discussing here this afternoon, we'll take calls on that as well. It's 2:20. This is Talk.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
10, 9, 8, 7, RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon.
Houston now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis 2 mission around the moon.
Integrity, AMT high.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. This comes in from Vince, who says, why would we want to go back to the EU? The ECHR has worked out well for us. Not. Although the ECHR isn't connected to the EU, I should add. Open borders has worked out well, right? Not, he says. We need to be running in the opposite direction to the EU. As of trading area, the EU is nothing when you compare it to other trading areas. The Commonwealth, for example, 56 independent countries spanning Africa, Asia, the Americas, Europe, and the Pacific. It covers roughly a quarter of the world's landmass and is home to 2.7 billion people, almost one-third of the global population, 60% of whom are aged 29 or under. That's a great factoid. The EU is a corner shop when compared to the Commonwealth supermarket. He goes on to say all the other regulators, all the other organisations, trading areas around the world are better, more profitable than the EU. Less regulation, no restrictions. Labour just want to destroy the UK, the same as every single Labour government has done when in power. What Labour can't buy into, I don't think they want to destroy it in their mind. I think what they believe is that we are better off in some kind of cosy liberal cartel. I'm not using that as a pejorative. Quite genuinely, I think it is spreadsheet politics. I think they love that. I think they dine out on that. They feel comfortable in that. It's a cosy pair of slippers to them. Again, I'm not even trying to be smart by saying I genuinely think that's what motivates the sort of very pro-EU voice. To Keir Starmer, that kind of Blairite. Gordon Brown had a PhD in this kind of stuff. He loved a database. He loved it all to be nicely laid out and beautifully clipped and clinically prepared, and everything was ready to go, and this bit was there. And, you know, the kind of person that would always have a kind of, you know, an ornament on one side of the fireplace and an identical one on the other side. That sort of synergy and synchronicity that just fills the pit of their belly with joy. The thought that that's how it functions, because that is very much what it's like. I said at the beginning, it's like being in a book club, being in the EU. There's nothing wrong with the EU if that is your desired future, but there are other options out there, and I'm going to repeat that phrase again. Said it yesterday, said it 1,000 times. Being in the EU is not a law of physics. Okay, you don't have to. It's like, oh right, if you're not in that group, that trading, then you're knackered, mate. People will argue too, and the toss, it may financially turn out to make no difference at all either way. But the point is about autonomy. The point is about controlling your own rules and regulations, even if those rules and regulations look very much the same, as of course they do. When people they try to use that smart question, give me one benefit in your life that has happened since we left the EU. It's a stupid question. It doesn't really exist. It's not about what the benefit or the law is. It's who makes it, who's in charge of it, who can change it. That's the point. It's a democratic issue, which is the most overarching, overwhelming, profound and compelling part of this argument with the EU. We can have relationships with all of these areas, as many as we possibly can. But in terms of how we think, how we function, what bobs us along on a daily basis, I sense the American relationship. I know we can hark back to the Reagan thing and Thatcher thing again. That relationship was like no other. Nothing has replicated it since. Can it happen again? Richard, over there in North London. Richard, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hey, Ian.
Hi.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, the chap who you were discussing the war with, he seemed to be so much of a Donald Trump admirer that he seemed to have a Donald Trump hairstyle as well.
Well, I think he was probably a Trump supporter. I don't think he would dispute that or even be bothered by that.
I mean, the problem is he actually said that the purpose of the war wasn't regime change, but that's precisely what Donald Trump said in the first weekend of this. He actually said he said something like, hang on, Iraqi people, stay indoors for a few days, we're going to get rid of the army and then you can come out onto the streets and do the rest. I mean, this literally is making up policy as you go along, and it's incredibly important, Ian. The problem is that if you look at, let's see, what went wrong last time when we had, let's say, a semi-legal war in Iraq. Two things happened. It led to a disaster. There was no plan for turning Iraq into a proper country, and it led to two things. It led to a lot more terrorism, and it radicalised people like the 7/7 bombers, who killed about 53 Londoners on the London Underground. But not just that, Ian. It led to the rise of the Islamic State. So effectively, it set off a whole kind of terrorist chain reaction in the Middle East, and I'm amazed that we've just forgotten this.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it. Blair's point. You know, when Blair is asked about this, how do you justify something that's seemingly made the world worse? I might have got this wrong, Richard. I'm absolutely fascinated by it. I'd love to sit in a room with Blair and really thrash this out, because I think his point...
He just insists he was right, doesn't he?
Well, I think his point is that all this ISIS stuff and whatever was going to happen anyway. That was already happening, and it was getting bigger. When he talks about, he says it's complicated, doesn't it? Which is no answer at all. I'm certainly not defending him, but I'm trying to find what that argument was. It was on the lines of, look, this is a basket. This place is going to erupt, and we need to make sure that we are in the right place when it does. And whether that's Iran, Iraq, whether it is what is happening with the neighbours of Israel, we can look at all of that, whether you look at Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, this was on its way, regardless of whether we went to Baghdad or not. True or false?
Well, false, really, because the reality is he said that the reason for that war were weapons of mass destruction that were never found. But the point is, what really worries me, Ian, is this: we're not thinking this through. If Trump can't be realistic when he talks about leaving NATO, there's a good chance that he'll be a puppet president. A puppet president come November, because this war is not popular in America, and the Republicans could lose both houses. So he could be a puppet president. He could even be impeached, because the Democrats will
impeached for what?
For the various things they tried to impeach him about before, Ian. And one of the other things that people haven't noticed, very conveniently, Trump has made no moves whatsoever in terms of going after any of the many names on the Epstein list. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that people are being protected. But the point about this is it's a bit like the EU. You've just said the point of leaving the EU was about political sovereignty. Actually, Ian, at the time, people like Farage and Julia didn't say that. They said, well, we're better off out of the EU. And I just
Julia's always argued the democratic card.
But Farage made again. I mean, you got.
Well, I think Farage has got a whole ton of reasons. I don't think there's one.
You've got the mini-me Trump. He went from saying that the Germans...
You say mini-me Trump. We'd heard of Farage before we'd heard of Trump as a politician.
Yeah, but I call him the mini-me Trump because here is someone else who makes it up as he goes along. He said at one point that the Germans would beg us for a trade deal, or the Europeans would beg us for a trade deal. Ian, they threatened us with the IRA. They basically said if you have an Irish border, if you have a firm Irish border, you'll get.
You want to be part of that?
Well, the point is, this is the point, isn't it? The point is here, we didn't have a clear, we weren't clear at the time it was just about sovereignty. People were saying that we're going to be better off. Now, what worries me about this EU policy and the war is that there's a sense in which both Reform and the Conservatives are walking into a trap. Ian, people do not want us involved in another war. It's as simple as that. And if you want to see the Greens and Labour in some sort of awful coalition in 3 years' time, then, then carry on in this vein. Because I think it's a trap.
OK.
It's a trap.
All right, Richard, look, that's a powerful point to finish on. Thank you, mate. Really nice to speak. Richard in North London. It's a trap, and it will set off a chain of events. We are involved in Iran. We're not fully involved in Iran, but, if you spoke to the Ayatollah Jr., and said, who's on the list? He'd say America, and Great Britain are there as well. So I don't think we could sell that point to the Iranians. 0344 499 1000. Lots more still to come. We are going to talk about that oil drilling. Rachel Reeves wants to drill, baby, drill. What's the reality of this, and what's the possibility of it? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk 25 to 3. We've got the Voice of Doom coming up. Is it day 3 of the Voice of Doom? I think it is day 3. We'll be doing that in about 15 minutes' time. Stand by. Meantime, let's have a look at this. This, of course, is the incredible story that Rachel Reeves might want to drill, baby, drill. I mean, I'm putting that in obvious terms, but she's certainly backing drilling in the North Sea against, of course, one of her most senior cabinet colleagues, Ed Miliband. Can we do this? Let's speak with Catherine McBride, OBE, CEO of the Great British Business Council. That's a new think tank that aims to promote UK Industry, Enterprise and Innovation. Catherine, nice to have you with us. It's an interesting, wasn't it? Ed Miliband is, the guardian of the seas, it seems. He's sort of our own Neptune in that respect. You can't get anywhere near the waves because Ed said, no one round here, please. Rachel Reeves has a different idea, and her thinking is that this is good for industry, it's good for Britain, it's good for our energy security, and it's good for the taxpayer.
It's incredibly good for her accounts, that's for sure. Although she has to do her part. You know, it's great to say, yes, we should drill, but the problem is not drilling. We've got a whole lot of wells up there that are now producing about half the amount they used to produce 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is to do with the incredibly high taxes that Rachel has put onto them. I mean, the Conservatives started this, and they got it up to 75%, and that was fixed until 2028. But Rachel has extended it to 2030 and increased it to 78%, and also taken away all of their sort of tax deductions for investment in new investigations and new drilling stuff. So she's made it virtually unprofitable to drill in the North Sea. So the good news for at least taxpayers is that there's nothing that the OBR or any people on the left can complain about us losing taxes. Because of this completely stupid tax regime, the OBR is predicting that in 3 years' time, we will only be getting about £200 million in all of the taxes we're charging on oil and gas producers. 2 years ago, we were getting close to £10 billion
wow.
from the same sources. So it's amazing what increasing your taxes to astronomical rates does to industry.
It's funny, that, isn't it? It's all many of us have been shouting this out very loudly for years, that it's, a sixth former could work out the basic maths of this. Is it possible, though, that, I would suggest we are in an energy emergency? We have a huge problem, issues surrounding Russia, pipelines, and of course Iran now. So we've got a huge amount of problems. Could Rachel Reeves say, right, and the government say, right, we're going to open up those oil fields in the North Sea. We'll address the tax breaks will be phenomenal for any country involved because we've got to get this stuff out. We've got to get using it quickly. Could they do something like that?
For sure. In fact, only 3 years ago, we only charged 40% tax on oil and gas extraction. And that was much higher than at the time, the regular corporate tax was only 19%. Mm-hmm. So the oil industry was already paying more than their fair share, if you like, because it was on ring-fence profits. So even though many of them are large multinationals, they couldn't bring in losses from other parts of their company and write it off against their profits in the North Sea. So they were already paying a lot of tax. And she just has to bring it back to that level.
Yeah.
And they don't even have to drill a new well.
Sure.
They'd probably just turn on the taps that they've had there.
Yep.
But there are 3 sites that were approved and then had their approval removed after a Scope 3 law was changed. That's the Rosebank and the Cambo sites, which are west of Shetlands. And they are both oil areas, and they're very close together so that they can be developed and used, maybe share a pipeline or something.
I can see Ed Miliband, of course, discombobulating at this news, and then to be told not only are we going to allow drilling and oil production, we're also going to give the companies tax breaks. I mean, his head will be spinning like something from a Stephen King flick, right? I mean, this would just be the worst possible news. But it sounds as if this is probably going to get the green light. Is that? Am I being too optimistic here?
No, it must get the green light. I mean, there's another story out there. The Resolution Foundation is talking about increases in people's domestic bills.
Yeah.
And they're talking about household energy. They have not even noticed. They all probably drive electric scooters to their offices. But they don't know what's happening to petrol prices in the UK.
Yeah.
And we've lost 2 refineries in the last 12 months. We're down to just 4. A lot of the oil that is coming out of Shell-operated wells in the North Sea goes to their big refinery, which is in the Netherlands, which is why a lot of greenies will tell you that oh, it'll all be exported. There's no point of bringing it out. Well, it's getting exported to the Netherlands. So that's Shell taking it out of their wells and taking it to their refinery. Because the young people don't know the company used to be called Royal Dutch Shell, and the clue was in the name there.
Sure.
They've now shortened it to Shell. So we then import the refined oil back from Rotterdam. So it's not the way it's often portrayed in the media that all of this oil is being exported. It's just that we've only got 4 refineries left in the UK, and they tend to specialize in producing petrol, and the EU ones specialize in producing diesel. And this has happened for years, and then the refineries swap, if you like. So diesel tankers will come into the UK and petrol tankers will go into the EU.
I know your organisation only yesterday published that report, Premeditated Industrial Destruction, how the UK destroyed its industry and a plan to reverse it. So this, I guess, what we're talking about here now, Catherine, is sort of what, phase 1 in reversing it?
Well, it's certainly the first thing we recommend is to get rid of the energy profits levy, which is the windfall tax. It's unnecessary. It's not giving the oil companies a tax break. They were already paying more tax than anyone else in terms of, percentage-wise.
Sure.
And it's also, this was introduced by Sunak as a way of raising revenue. This had nothing to do with our green agenda. It's not part of our Paris Agreement. It's not part of any other international thing. It's something we could reverse very quickly and very easily. And it's time that someone did, and it was a sitting gift, an own goal for the Labour Party. They could have walked right in and said, oh, look what these terrible Conservatives did, and reversed it.
Yeah.
And instead they decided to make it slightly worse, which was...
I think they've got a PhD in that kind of stuff, though. We shouldn't be surprised by this, these kind of rather bizarre decisions. But when you have literally nobody, Catherine, in the cabinet that's ever been in business, which I find so deeply disturbing, I can't really find the words to describe how horrifying that is. But I guess it shouldn't be any surprise.
Well, that's right. But I would have thought that the Treasury people advising Rachel Reeves would have explained this to her.
Yeah, but then of course, what underpins everything is the net zero evangelism, isn't it? So if that becomes the barometer by which you make decisions, that's why they've been completely impotent since July 2024.
Well, it's great to talk about net zero, but in the report you will see the cumulative increases in global emissions, which are up since 1990, which is the Paris Agreement sort of target date or threshold date. Global emissions have increased by 1 trillion tonnes, and our total cumulative reductions are about 0.03% of that. It has made absolutely no difference to global emissions. They are just going up and up and up.
Down to what, Catherine, specifically?
Because the whole world is industrialising except us. The UK seems to be the main culprit in deindustrialising. Quite a lot of Western European countries are doing that.
Sure.
But the Eastern European countries are not.
And some parts of the world are just beginning their industrial revolution. So it's as you rightly say, it was a nonsensical arrangement that the Paris Accord and others that have kind of followed. Listen, Catherine, let's speak again. It's been great to chew the fat on this one. Catherine McBride, OBE, thank you to her. She's the CEO of the Great British Business Council, and they've got a lot to say. Fascinating little factoid she gave us at the end there, though. Steve is in Swansea. Steve, back to that special relationship. Who is it with, the EU or the USA?
It's got to be the USA. What annoys me is people saying Trump said this about Starmer, Trump said that about us. But Starmer started it all by sending people to Kamala Harris to help try and stop Trump from becoming president. I mean, that was a bad start.
Well, that is, in fairness, the Tories send groups of people to support the Republicans when they're campaigning. That's been done for years.
Really?
Yeah.
I've not heard of it.
I think there was just 12 work experience people went over there and handed out some leaflets. I don't think they did very much.
Right.
But either way, you're right. The mood music was set, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to tie yourselves to the EU, I mean, I remember the woman talking about France and the chip and pin. I mean, a French policeman can't even stick a penknife in a dinghy to stop them from coming over. So, I mean, to be closer
probably can't work
Europe,
a chip and pin. No. I love it. Steve, great call. Thank you. Steve in Swansea. This one from John in Bury. In my opinion, we should dump the EU big time. All of Europe is a dumping ground for non-productive migrants. We need to be in charge of our own borders, make our own legislation regarding law and employment. Us small businesses are being held back through red tape and woke nonsense. We need to lead again, be the tough nation we once were, and are called Great Britain for a reason. We need to work with the USA for defence and trade and dump the EU, and we should be standing up to Brussels, and we need a leader to represent what the British people want. And could you really define what the EU is? Because let's remember, and this is not an urban myth, and this is not a right-wing trope, this is not kind of mischief-making. The problem with the EU, the biggest problem I had with the EU, was when it ceased to clearly become, when it ceased to remain the trading, the common market thing. So I was too young to know the ins and outs of what the original common market thing was, and certainly wasn't old enough to vote on it. But since then, lots of things have happened that are really should be interesting to anyone who cares. And this, to me, was absolutely pivotal to the vote in 2016, when you realise this was not a trading bloc. This was becoming a United States. Now, I can hear the sort of left-wing massive kind of shouting at their radios or choking on their green tea when I make that point, because it's sort of been maligned as a bit of a conspiracy theory. There is no conspiracy theory there. And this is an organisation, the EU, that has a parliament, 2 parliaments, in fact. It has a currency, it has an anthem, it has a presidency. I think those things more or less define what a state is, right? And if you were to ask the German Chancellor or the Spanish, whatever, particularly the Germans and the French, is it a United States of Europe? They go, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we want it to be. So the overreach that began to happen outside of trade was there for all to see. This was becoming something more than it was intended to be. And it wasn't done with any kind of great philosophical idea, other than people just liked the thought of doing it. This whole thing started with a French, it was a sort of Franco-German alliance about oil and steel, or coal, I think. That's really what it was about to begin with. It was about trading arrangements, and everyone kind of got that a little bit. And then it went a little further and became something else. They start talking about uniformity in policing or military. And you go, OK, you can have arrangements, but this is feeling like something much more. 0344 499 1000. We'll continue to take your calls in just a moment. The Voice of Doom Day 3 is coming next on Talk.
and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This from, just before we do the Voice of Doom, Robin Burnley says, I think the worst thing we ever did as a population was tell Ed Miliband his plans couldn't be done. Even if he has only 5% chance of succeeding, he's going to hang on to this in the hope that he'll go down in history. We're spending all this cash on early generation renewables. China are already testing flying wind turbines that utilise the jet stream and are said to be 3 times more efficient. We'll be fully stocked with 3D TV equivalents of green tech. That's a great point. I don't hear that point raised very often. This is the Betamax, right, just to continue the analogy that Rob is making. We're in the Betamax phase of green technology. So hang on in there, drill for a bit, dig it all up, pipe it all out, get functional, get autonomous with our energy. And then when the flying wind turbines are around, then we move in. Sounds fair enough. Right, Voice of Doom, day 3. This is the mystery voice, but it's political. I have to say that every time, because each time we do it, somebody comes up with, I don't know, a comedian or an actor or something. You're looking for a politician, left wing or right wing, dead or alive. Who is this?
We didn't do that.
And again.
We didn't do that.
87222 if you think you know. Don't phone, just message 87222 if you think you know who this is.
We didn't do that.
And of course, if we get a right answer, we reveal all after the news. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. Here it is again.
We didn't do that.
87222. Caroline is in Buckinghamshire. Caroline, what have you got for us? Hi.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I just want to talk about the EU. And you had a conversation with, I can't remember what the gentleman's name was, but he was clearly a Remainer. And the thing that I just wanted to point out, really, is when we joined the EU, I was only 13 at the time, and I remember thinking that my parents were like, no, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. And they... Well, I don't know how they voted, but I'm assuming they voted to reject it. But what I will say is, you know, there was just 9 countries. And as each decade or whatever, quarter of decade, whatever you want to call it, has gone on, it's got more and more integrated, more and more and more and more. And we did need to be asked the question, are you happy with this? And I'm not happy with people that are appointed. I want to know that, you know, I've elected that person. And I just feel that the EU, personally speaking, is like, if I had my time again, I voted to leave. If I had my time again, I'd double down to leave. And I've got so many friends that actually feel the same way as I do.
But what do we do in terms of new countries joining? Does that mean there should be a referendum each time a new country joins? Because one would assume that the representatives of the EU debate whether or not, new country, whether Turkey can join is an obvious example.
Well, for me personally, I just think that we were never asked this basic question. It was like, listen, guys, there's 9 countries. We all had that 50p with their little hands round, and we're all, and then all of a sudden it was more. I don't have a problem with Turkey joining. I wish they would, to be honest with you. But I don't want other countries joining that are, that I can't explain it to you. I just feel personally that we need to be all united. And I think that what we've done at the moment by leaving was the best decision.
You've just reignited the 50p with the hands on it.
Yeah.
Are they still around?
Do you remember that?
Well, I remember. I tell you what, I do remember. Manan had one, and I thought Manan was a currency dealer or something. I thought, what's she up to? She's got some moody money here. Never seen one of those before. And she had it on the mantelpiece or in a box or something. And I just remember, she goes, "Oh, that's 50p." And I thought, well, that's not 50p. It's got, wasn't one of the hands the Queen's hand?
I think it's either the Queen's. Yeah, I think it was actually. Yeah, because it wasn't Margaret Thatcher, I know that.
No.
But it was definitely a woman's hand on there.
I think... Is that what that... I didn't even know.
Germany, France,
Is that
Britain.
what it was meant to be? The original... Well, not the original members,
yeah,
but...
it was originally called the... I'm trying to think what it's called. The EEC? The European Economic Community. No, it was the European...
Well, it was the Common Market, wasn't it? Then it was the European Community.
And then it went to the EEC, the European Economic Community, and then it became the EU.
So, I mean, the European Union, when people say it's not a United States, well, the European Union is kind of a way of saying United States, isn't it?
We were never asked, was that okay?
Absolutely bang on. Love it. Caroline, thank you very much indeed for that. Caroline would double down, triple down if asked again to leave if we were still in that position. Thank you to her. More from you on the way. So much to come in the next hour. 0344 499 1000. Don't be going anywhere. And, of course, we've got the voice of doom. Very simple. If you know who this is...
We didn't do that.
87222. I'm hopeful we're going to get a right answer. If we do, we shall reveal all after the news headlines. Coming next, right here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the Afternoon Empire. Good afternoon. Welcome back. Lots to get through. We are, of course, talking about the ongoing conflict in Iran, well, the knock-on effects of that, of course. We know about the cost of living crisis. We know about security concerns. This has reignited, understandably so, that debate about the US versus the EU when it comes to where this country's allegiance should be. Who is that special relationship really with? Thoughts on that? Of course, accusations against Keir Starmer on this, shamelessly using the crisis in Iran to attempt to reverse Brexit by suggesting the UK could virtually rejoin the European single market. Is he on manoeuvres? Our Keir, we know where his heart is on this one. Well, amid President Trump's threats against Iran, mortgage holders face the highest borrowing costs in 3 years. The average 5-year fixed mortgage rate has now jumped significantly, reaching 5.78% today. That is the highest since November 2023. I tell you what, at this rate, things are going to get very, very wobbly very quickly. I mean, they weren't in good nick to start with. And Sean Keach, who is, of course, Head of Science and Technology at The Sun, will join us to talk through all the latest tech. There is some unbelievable stories coming your way, including, of course, the launch of Artemis 2 last night. It's up there, flying around well, it's nearly there. It's on its way to the moon. The imagery that's coming back at the moment is quite stunning. I am told the significance of this is vast for the human journey. We'll have more on that with Sean a little later. 3:05, Voice of Doom coming up as well. Stand by for that. And, of course, what is happening with non-crime hate incidents? Well, it was announced this week, of course, that they're going to kind of pretty much disappear by the Home Secretary. But the Met Police were kind of ahead of the game here. So Mark Rowley claims that scrapping them, as they did back in December, to a degree, has doubled the Met's rate of solving real hate crimes. This has led to the reported increase in solved cases. Well, you know, as sure as night follows day, that would happen. But are they really disappearing for good? Let's speak with Harry Miller, former police officer, founder of Fair Cop. Harry, always nice to see you. When I saw we'll come to the Met thing in a moment. When I saw the announcement this week, Shabana Mahmood's getting rid of these things, and I sort of looked into the small print of it, and I thought, I'm not absolutely sure that's quite what they've said.
No, it's not quite what they said. What worries me right now, of course, is that what they've done is they've given them a name, basically a name change. They knew how deeply unpopular non-crime hate incidents were. So they're still going to be with us, but they're going to come at us via other means. What needs to happen, in actual fact, is the whole concept of non-crime hate incidents. It needs loading up and putting on Artemis 2 and launching into deep, deep space. That's what needs to happen. Yeah. But also, I would make room for the idiots at the College of Policing who invented these things in the first place. I would drop them off at the moon so they can no longer perpetrate their complete idiocy on the human race ever again. What is particularly worrying, I think, is that the police have discovered that non-crime hate incidents, one, they never prevented any hate crime. They were designed to prevent hate crime. But if you look at the figures, they were introduced in 2014 in order to combat hate crime. And what has happened since then is hate crime is increased by over 400%. So by any measure, they are a complete and utter and colossal failure. In any other industry, if you introduce a measure in order to solve a problem, and all that happens is the problem gets worse fourfold over time, then people need to be sacked. The people that invented that need to be sacked, and they need to be nowhere near policing ever again. So what's going to happen now is that the police have discovered that whilst they didn't prevent actual crime, what they were was a useful tool for combating free speech and for spreading the chilling effects on free speech on members of the public. And that, I'm afraid, will continue. It will no longer be now under the auspices of non-crime hate incidents, but you watch this space. They will start using the Online Safety Act. They will double up on the use of malicious communications acts in order to investigate members of the public who have said things that they don't like, in order to spread the chilling effect. Now, they will do this not under the name of non-crime, but under the name of actual crime. And there'll be no chance that it will ever get to a court, no chance probably that it will get before a jury or even to the CPS. But it doesn't matter, because most people, when they find themselves at the wrong end of a police investigation, when they are told they are being investigated for a criminal offence, what it does, it scares them into submission. And so by those means, job is done. And that is my worry.
Yeah, what I can never quite work out about this whole thing, Harry, look, you were a cop some years ago now. You were, I don't want to age you or date you, but Robert Peel was your chief constable, as I understand it. Nonetheless, the gags are out the way. But I've never, when I meet coppers, Harry, I've never met a police officer that thinks any of this hate crime stuff is a good idea. So who does that? How do, I mean, the average cop gets told, right, your inspector or your sergeant says, you've got to go down to number 52. It's all kicking off down there. The fella at number 54 wrote something on Facebook, so you've got to go and investigate it. The officer is doing his job by attending the job he's been assigned, right? But I mean, is that it? Because I don't know anybody that thinks they're a good idea, or as they have been. So
no.
How has he been allowed to carry on for 13, 14 years?
Well, I've no idea how it's been allowed to carry on, partly because the College of Policing are a law unto themselves. They're in theory, their chief is the Home Secretary, but because of this strange relationship that the government has with policing, the actual owner of the College of Policing, the Home Secretary, can have nothing to do with the College of Policing in order for there to be a distance and a separation of powers. So, in fact, what we have is this quango that is funded by the government, but is not restricted by the government, which is designed to get people to the courts, but takes no notice of the courts. Yeah. You know, 2 court rulings in my case, 2019 at the High Court and 2021 at the Courts of Appeal, you would have thought the death knell, would have sounded the death knell on non-crime hate incidents. But the College of Policing just continue to encourage chief constables to record them anyway. They're a law unto themselves. Now, the fact of the matter is, members of the College of Policing tend to be failed police officers. They tend to be people who are very, very good at climbing the greasy pole of bureaucracy, who will score 10 out of 10 on a DEI course, but wouldn't recognise a criminal if he was carrying a swag bag and crawling out of somebody's broken window at midnight. These are the idiots who have been put in charge of this. Now, you're quite right. Most police officers, they join the job because they want to go out there and they want to feel collars. They don't want to be burdened by any of this nonsense. But unfortunately, in order to get on and to keep their jobs, they have to play the game. And I think it's quite stunning that Sir Mark Rowley has said that they've been able to double up on catching regular criminals as a result of not getting rid of non-crime hate incidents. Well, honestly, how much time has been wasted on this? How much time, if the Met Police are now able to double up on their investigations of crime, that tells us an awful lot about the complete ineffectual time waste that's been the non-crime hate incidents.
Again, just to go back to on at ground level, when an officer is assigned to one of these jobs, back at the police station, when they get the info that there's been this complaint that someone's said something about a rainbow flag on Facebook or something, to give the obvious example, doesn't anyone in the police station go, are you serious? Is there not? There must be somebody in the group that goes, are we really going out for that?
Yeah, but unfortunately, those voices, there are loads of those voices, but they have to keep stum because if they question it, they themselves will become subject to a non-crime hate incident. Yeah. They'll find themselves in trouble. What tends to happen is this nonsense, it's contracted out to neighbourhood policing. Now, neighbourhood policing used to be the guys on the streets who'd go around to schools, to the local village hall, and find out what was going on the ground and making sure that everybody was safe in the local community. Not anymore. For the last 10 years or so, neighbourhood community officers have been going out spreading their message of hate. They've been going around developing this hate industry on the behalf of goodness knows who, working for the likes of Stonewall, working for the likes of DEI. That's what they've been doing. They are divorced from regular officers, and it is these absolute morons who are going around, who are going out doing all this, and their own colleagues hate them. That's the fact. Their own colleagues who were there responding to 999 calls, instance, batteries, the whole gamut of things that police officers have to deal with, whilst meanwhile other colleagues are there going down to the local bakery telling people about hate crime with a baguette. It's absolutely pathetic. And the sooner it's shut down, the better.
Yeah. I disagree, really, frankly, Harry. I think hate crime with a baguette is a very serious offence. I don't know if you've ever been whacked with one of those French sticks. It's a horrendous experience. So, but I just listen. Your points are always great on this. You're bang on note on this, Harry. Great to have you on again. Thank you, Harry Miller, former cop, founder of Fair Cop. The more you think about the hate crime thing, it's fascinating as to how you could ever intelligently define a hate crime. Now, I'm not talking about a racist crime, because that is not a non-crime. If you shout the N-word in the street and start beating up people because of the colour of their skin, then that is already a crime. So we get that. But the non-crime stuff, so stuff that doesn't meet a criminal threshold, you don't need me to tell you this again, by definition is not a crime, and therefore not to be investigated unless you live in North Korea, where they might just want to follow up because there is no other route to go on this. I've tried to look. I've tried to see if there's a little sneaky alleyway that I've missed in this debate where you could circumnavigate the headlines and actually find a curious bit of logic in the hate crime thing. And I genuinely can't. So we're invariably talking about people who have disagreeable opinions, and that would more or less be it, okay? Or people who dare to say something non-controversial about gender or something like that. Being unpleasant is not a crime. Being an idiot is not a crime. And I think it's those two things that have got forgotten in the arena of common sense. Being unpleasant, being a head, and being Larry or stupid are not criminal acts. There's a lot of stupid people out there, all right? If we criminalise stupidity, we'd have half the country in jail. So what the hell? I mean, seriously, when you start to break it down, what is going on? I'll tell you the nearest somebody tried to sell it to me, that years ago, if your neighbour had been abusive across the garden fence, 4 doors down, right across the fence. Oh, you fat cow, your washing's still out. Something like that. And that person called the police and said, I've just been intimidated by the people down the road. And the police did come out. Then the copper might put it in his notebook for future reference. They could be a little bit tasty down there at number 73. That was a recorded non-crime hate incident in the old days. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. That was the nearest alleyway I found. Let's go to Michael in Hertfordshire. Let's get back to it then, our big question that we've been talking about. What are you thinking on this point, Michael? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Hi.
We have to stand united as democratic countries.
Mm-hmm.
We can't go one way or the other. We have to be all together. Starmer has taken the great out of Great Britain. They're all forgetting that the Iranian regime killed 30,000 people, of their own people. And if we don't stop it, and the rockets, I don't care what England or anybody else says, or France, they're going to reach us eventually. So if we don't do anything about it now, there'll be more lives lost later on. So we have to stay united. The greatest thing the Iranians have seen is fighting among ourselves. The Americans, and I don't believe in everything Trump does, I don't think he's a politician, but all he wanted was a little show of unity. Wouldn't have taken much, and the Iranians wouldn't have got the confidence they got there.
Yeah,
they don't care about losing
and I think, Keir Starmer did not have to commit us to sort of taking part in a full-on war. But what he did commit us to was an erosion of that special relationship in a very graphic way.
Absolutely. Allies don't deal the way that Starmer and Macron and others have dealt.
Sure.
And America has been there when we've needed them. And as I say, they weren't asking for troops. They weren't asking for full-scale. We haven't got an army anyway.
Yeah.
What they were showing were a show.
Yep.
Just a show. And they never got it. And now Iran has seen the breakup, the relationship not working, and they can see a bit of light. But what Europe has forgotten, and all these countries haven't helped, they killed 30,000 of their own people. And the other thing
that's just this year.
That's just this year, 100% correct. If they don't start drilling for oil and gas, I think they should be. I'm lost for words. I've been going on your show, other people on your show, for months. It's common sense. It's not dragging their policies down. It's common sense. We're in an emergency.
It's almost, you should almost be arrested for not just stupidity, although I did say that being stupid is not a criminal offence. But I think in this case, you take my point that it's an act of self-sabotage of such magnitude. There are even green environmental campaigners, Michael, saying drill in the North Sea.
Absolutely, and I've said this. Not only the head of the organisation doing the green stuff has said they should do it. Experts have said they'd do it. They should do it, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, he's having a meeting there. He loves meetings. At least this is England. It's not costing us so much.
Loves a meeting
with these 30 nations. What are they going to do except talk without America's back?
But that, you see, that's the whole kind of. I know it's not just EU, but, that is the very Starmer, he's very comfortable. Sunak was also... Do you remember, Sunak, when I saw Sunak, Macron, Trudeau, remember that merchant, Michael, who ran Canada? I have this when I want to talk about global groupthink, and I'm not talking about the fact that I'm not into the kind of conspiracy of, it's a globalised thing, we should resist anything that's global. Obviously, some things are going to be global. But that trio... standing on the world stage, everything about that image, still, that's the kind of stuff that could keep me awake at night, because I think that's where our politics has gone wrong. And Starmer took up that mantle. He runs with that baton, and he loves it. He loves that world stage thing. He loves that group thing. He loves that, again, the neat, tidy, clipped, clinical database way of doing things. The spreadsheet mentality. Listen, I've got to move, Michael. You make some brilliant points, particularly that on the North Sea and oil at the moment. We're going to go back to more calls in just a moment. We'll also let you know whether we've got a winner on the Voice of Doom shortly as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 0344 499 1000. And if I can just lob my ears in, we can hear everything as well. Should we do the voice of doom just before we speak to Matt in Cheshire? This was the voice we played you just before the news at 3.
We didn't do that.
So there's the question. Who is that? These are some of the guesses. George Osborne, no. Liz Truss, no. Damien Green, Christine Jardine, Tony Blair, Michael Fabricant, Margaret Thatcher. Can we hear it again?
We didn't do that.
Yes, it's... Rishi Sunak, no. James Murray. And James Murray, is he an actor? Is he a politician as well? James Murray. There's Bill Murray, of course. He's an actor. And there's an MP, James Murray. It's a fairly common name, I suppose, James Murray. We haven't got a right answer. No one's got it right. It means it rolls over for day 4. Tomorrow it shall return. We didn't think in the grander scale, by the way, that this was a particularly difficult one. I know I often say that, but genuinely, in this grander scheme of things, I know you've got to sort of know your politics with these things, but loads of you do that listen to us here. So that one isn't like, it's not going to really test you like some of the others have. It's back tomorrow. Matt's in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matt? Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon, Ian. It was just one comment on I'll mix the two. I've called about him trying to overturn Brexit.
Yeah.
But you also you made it sound like Starmer is deeply analytical, organised and precise and ponderous. And according to those around him, he is none of those things. He's a stooge, a patsy, a husk and a tailor's dummy. And it's basically an airfix kit human being politician who just gets force-fed like digital sound bites and parrots them out like a brain-dead monkey. He's got
hang on, we've got an airfix model, we've got a monkey, we've got a robot, we've got a great image of him here.
Well, he is all those things, but none of the things you described. You made him sound like he was like the CEO of a huge conglomerate.
No, I'm not suggesting he's good on details, but you have to. The one thing you'd have to hand it to him, and he was a pretty successful lawyer, so he can't be stupid, right? At whatever level, he can't be completely. He must know some stuff.
You can have all your notes prepared for you before you go into court.
Well, that's you've kind of have sort of made the same point, really, Matt, and that is that you're right. I think he likes the group thing. If the people in the EU are saying it, then he wants to be part of that. So he does like to belch out a soundbite. He does like the clinical press release. It doesn't mean that he's analytical in his thinking. He's just happy to be part of the group rather than the individual.
Yeah, I mean, that is totally true. He's basically just, I think we've spoke for 3 years. He's the end of the line for the liberal globalist politician. He's the last one to die. After him and Macron represent the death of it. And the main thing was he tried to rubbish my vote And I hated him from that moment after Brexit. He tried to make my vote worthless, and 17.4 million people liked me.
You mean when he was campaigning to have for the vote challenged?
Yeah, he doesn't respect democracy. He's a liar. He's a coward. And anybody that voted for him if they voted for Brexit and then trusted him with the vote after he'd already tried to overturn their vote, I just cannot understand that for the life of me.
Well, I'm not going to use that phrase in fairness to Keir Starmer, but in fairness to Keir Starmer, if you were a Remainer, is there anything wrong with saying, I believe this vote needs to be challenged legally, and I'm going to take it through as many routes as I can that I'm allowed to legally in order to establish that? Because if you're a Remainer, you've got the hump, right? You're very angry of what has happened, so you're going to find a way to challenge it.
When Corbyn got annihilated by Boris Johnson, Starmer turned on a sixpence and then changed all that immediately to, Brexit is settled. He's a duplicitous coward who will say anything to anyone at any moment, probably very much like Boris Johnson, who was the one person he hated more than anybody.
Yeah, there's some truth in that. I met a lawyer a couple of years ago, Matt, who knew Starmer in the early days, before he was head of the Crown prosecution and all the rest of it. So he was a jobbing lawyer, and the guy said he was quite good. He said, but the one thing that sort of marked him out is that he was always going to be head of the CPA. Always. He said that was his absolute laser-focused direction. He was always going there. And I find that rather interesting, because usually you'd like to think that that's fine to have that ambition, but it's got to come with some equipment, right? It's got to come with some philosophy and some ideology. But much in the same way that Boris Johnson wanted to be the Prime Minister, I don't think he knew why he wanted to be the Prime Minister. He just wanted to be the Prime Minister. He wanted to be able to say that he was the Prime Minister, but he didn't like the bit in the middle.
Yeah, if you know the right people in those circles, Ian. I mean, look at why has Lord Hermer got his job? Because he knows Keir Starmer and he's friends with him. He's also.
I thought he got it on merit, Matt. That's what I read.
Yeah, they all got it on merit.
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody I know that voted Labour, even people that voted Labour for 40 years, after 3 months they were saying, "Oh my God, what have I done?"
Well, the one thing that is true, I mean, is that he's not very good at being a Prime Minister. Considering he would have spent many years in big ornate courtrooms, shouting and barking defence cases to juries and in front of judges. Usually people like that are quite good operators, right? Even if you don't agree with them, they're just pretty good on their toes, and they can wheel out, great lines and effective and persuasive arguments. But he doesn't have any of that, which I find, you'd think anyone who'd been a lawyer, like anyone who'd been an actor, for example, Ronald Reagan was a good speaker, in part because he was previously an actor. You might think Starmer would have had a bit of that about him, but he hasn't got any of that about him.
No, I thought of Tom Cruise in A Few Good Men then, Ian, and then I just thought, he's a billion miles away from that. He's a haircut and a suit, Ian. He's all image and no depth.
Yeah.
And the sooner his kind of politician dies and we never see the likes of him, this country can move on into the real future.
I like it. Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. More comments in from you. Rob in Burnley says... Oh, no, I did read Rob's. Apologies. Anthony in the North East says, on the issue of using oil and gas, I've just flown back from offshore West Shetland, and we always fly past the Beatrice offshore wind farm. Wind turbines for as far as the eye can see. Not one of them was turning. This site is not uncommon. There could be 10 million of these turbines, but if there's no wind, there is no power. Yeah. No one has satisfaction. No, okay. No one to any great satisfaction has ever explained. I'm sure when all the academics of this world get together, they all understand it. What the deal is with that, because you can't say, well, there's no wind. Oh, don't worry, when there's no wind, the panels take over. Well, if there's no sun and no wind, that's not an uncommon. So what happens then? They can't store this stuff yet. I think it's quite a persuasive argument, but I did like the one I read out a little earlier from Rob, who said that the technology we're using, the wind turbines and are kind of going to be out of date quite quickly. So we're sort of working, he called it the 3D TV equivalent, kind of like the Betamax thing. Yeah, and if that is the case, man alive, we've spent an awful lot of money on it, right? 03444991000. Sean Keach is going to join us in a couple of moments' time from The Sun. Keep it here, 3:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25 to 4. Guess who's here? Look, Sean Keach, Head of Science and Technology over there at The Sun, is with us. He's got a big smile on his face, and there's a good reason for that, of course, because it's very much a spacey time at the moment.
It's a spacey time.
I mean, when you're head of science and tech and a big moon endeavour is underway, this is like Christmas for you, right?
I was sad that they didn't invite me, but I'm happy that it was a success.
You want to be the fifth? How many's up there? 5 astronauts, isn't it? 5 gone?
4, but actually I don't think I would like to go. It sounds quite scary.
Well, we spoke to a space expert yesterday who was telling us that if you wanted to go to Mars now, if you wanted to try that and go, he was talking about the distance and the time, but you'd have to be away from home for 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe even longer, depending on the time that you fly. It's going to be very difficult, because when you think about...
Can any human do that?
Like sending people to, like, America, 300 or 400 years ago. I mean, that was weeks, and that put people off. And the idea of being stuck in a tiny box for 2 years is awful. And then it's not very lush when you get flushed when you get to the other end of it. I think Mars is quite miserable if you try to colonise it.
Yeah, I mean, but the I know there's astronauts that often when they practice those, when they're at the space station, they do practice, the solitary thing of being almost in a box and not even be able to come out in the, when you're in the NASA HQ or Cape Canaveral, wherever you are, and you're doing these training things, and you're going to be in this box for 6 weeks. and you're not going anywhere, you'd think, like, OK, but come 9 o'clock in the morning, they let you out for a week. No, they don't. That's where you've got to stay, because that's the training for it.
There's not many people I'd want to be stuck for 2 years with. My wife is probably the only person.
Yeah, and even there's a question mark. So
it's a long time.
But 3 years, imagine that for 3 years. What does that do to your brain?
And then also the communication delay, because you think that they're so far away that you can't like do a video call back home. Like, it would take hours to communicate and have a, it'd almost be like old school telegrams.
That would be extraordinary. Give us there's been some criticism here of this, because I heard Jeremy Carr this morning saying, I don't care about this space thing. I heard Kevin O'Sullivan, who's on After Us, going, it's not a story. I keep hearing from spacey people, or people like yourself, actually, this is a very significant and important mission. It's not a vanity thing. They're not just going out there for a little fly around, take some pictures, come back. There's real purpose behind it.
They will be taking some pictures, certainly.
Well, yes, some of the pictures we've seen already are amazing.
But it is super important. And I think it's easy to forget. I think people don't take it as seriously as they should, because we've already been to the moon, and we did it in the 70s, and you think, well, we've done it, we've been there, who cares? But this is sort of paving the way for the future Artemis missions. So this is Artemis 2. There's a whole program stretching right into the late 2030s.
Sure.
And so next year they're going to do another sort of whiz up into space, and then in 2028, unless it gets pushed back, and it might get pushed back, they're going to be setting up landing on the moon, and then in the 2030s they'll be setting up a permanent base.
Yes.
It's a bit like Antarctica, how they have those permanent research stations where people are sort of miserable and cold for 6 months stints of the year. They'll be doing that on the moon as well, and so we'll have a sort of permanent colony. And of course, it's not just the US doing this. China and Russia also want to do something.
So there's going to be three. They're going to be up there, like, looking over the fence, going, "How's the building going over there?" Like, oh, he's got a bloody satellite dish.
Like keeping up with the Joneses.
Is that going to be happening like that? He's always done his borders. He's got a new flower bed.
Well, we hope it'll be like that, and not sort of Star Wars.
But this is not in our lifetime, right?
The lunar base will certainly.
The lunar base
will certainly be in our lifetime.
But in terms of us going up there for a weekend away,
traveling. Well, it's very difficult. I think it's more likely for the moon than Mars. I think Mars in our lifetimes, just popping for a holiday, will be very difficult. And I certainly think we'll see space hotels in sort of low Earth orbit in our lifetimes. Whether you'll sort of pop to the moon, I don't. I think it's going to be a lot of research scientists for a long time. But who knows? Technology changes quickly.
True.
And by the 2060s, it might be a very different story.
One of the books that got me into reading years ago was a book called Stark by Ben Elton, and the central. It's just very funny. It's written by Ben Elton when he was funny, and it centres on, if I've got this right, that building a kind of kind of like a town or a base on another planet, because Earth is going to go pear-shaped, and all the billionaires and rich people are going to go and live in on this new planet. That was the gist of it. Is that really what's going on here? They know that we're knackered. It's all kicking off in Iran, Russia, China. No one can agree. Everyone's having a fight. So all the rich people, Elon Musk, will just go, bye.
I mean, you can certainly...
They'll get in their rocket and off they'll go. You never see them again.
You can certainly see that was sort of already happening, because a lot of the people that have been going up on these private space flights have been very rich people. And I think it will be especially interesting with Mars, because Mars has a very different gravity to us. And so when you get into the situation where you say you have a town set up on Mars, and then you have the first people starting being born on Mars, they'll grow up in a completely different gravity to here on Earth. And so if you then brought them back to Earth, it would feel like a crushing weight had been put on them. So you might then have two sort of divergent species, where you have Earth humans and Mars people who are just used to a totally different gravity. It's very strange.
Is this... I know journalists can't reveal their sources, but are you saying the Mars people exist?
They might one day, certainly.
But I mean,
the other grim reality of living on Mars would be that they'd probably put us in underground tunnels, because the radiation is so intense up there. And one of the ideas is to have us all living under the ground like mole people, which isn't great as a sort of like poster for come live on Mars. In your sort of...
Mole people, you see, now that's a great... I have heard people make the argument about here on Earth. We talk about building. Why do we not build downwards? We're always building upwards. Why are we not making more homes in the ground?
It's very hard to drill. I've done stories on like the world's deepest holes before, and actually we've...
That was a slow news day, wasn't it?
But it's actually very hard to get very deep into Earth, and it's really very unexplored. I mean, we think often of like space being unexplored. The sea is very unexplored, and certainly at deep Earth is unexplored. We're barely near the centre.
Yeah, but if somebody fits, when you're building, I don't know, if somebody fits a swimming pool somewhere or a big building, they've got to drill down quite a lot first, maybe 50 foot, 100 foot, whatever. So why are we not doing more of that just for house building?
Well, I think the hobbits, I guess, have got it right, haven't they? Just dig into the hills, have lovely little hobbit holes. Maybe that's the solution.
Well, yeah, Hobbit Hole Incorporated.
They are quite cosy, aren't they?
I'm going to take that to
But that's what we might live in on Mars. Hobbit holes.
Let's move to Apple here, Sean. Am I right in saying that Apple was 50 this week? Is that right?
Yeah, they are 50, actually. Yeah. Well noted. You're clearly a fan.
Well, I am a big Apple fan, but... there wasn't. I don't know what you meant to make of it. People don't put flags out and they go, "Oh, the Apple people are celebrating half a century."
I tell you what, I did see a weird celebration. There's this company called Caviar that makes these like mad iPhones that are like bejazzled almost, and they've made 9 that have a sort of like a cutout of Steve Jobs' actual turtleneck jumper, and so they have a bit of fabric meshed onto the phone, and I don't know how much they are. I mean, I think it's like £7,000 or £8,000. It's somewhere in that region. So I don't know who's going to be buying that, but what a weird celebration.
Indeed. However, on a more serious point, they are 50 and they are very, very careful about their security, and they have issued a fairly crucial update for iPhone users. Yeah, there's this attack, which actually I think is quite delightfully named Dark Sword. The hackers, they come up with some good PR and marketing, but it is very serious. So basically, if you click on a dodgy website, you don't need to click on anything on the website. Once you access one of these websites that's been sent to you, maybe as like a scam link or something, it basically finds a way of circumventing this vulnerability in your iPhone, and then the hackers can basically remove stuff from your iPhone so they can take your texts or your emails or your photos, or maybe, you know, the money that you've got in Bitcoin. All of that stuff, they can hijack it. So Apple has pushed out a big software update, which you need to check for. So if you go to Settings, then General, then Software Update, you want to make sure that you're on iOS 26.3 or later. Or if you have an older iPhone, you want to make sure you're on iOS 18.7.7. So iOS 26.3 or 18.7.7. If you're on either of those, you're totally safe. The hackers can't get you. But if you're on earlier than that, you need to update as soon as possible, because you'd be vulnerable to this. But your phone would be already saying update, would it? Yes, it would. It would be asking you to update. But some people are resisting the update at the moment. I talked about this on last week's show, but Apple has pushed out this new update, iOS 26.4, where they're age checking people. So it's like a nationwide thing. If you have an iPhone in the UK and you update to the new software update, you will get this age check pop up, and you have to put in your driver's license or a credit card, or maybe your Apple account is very old, it'll sort of autofill. But some people are a bit nervous about this and don't want to update. But I would say, just sort of forget that update, because the hack attack is much worse than, you know, letting Apple see your driver's license temporarily. Got it. So what do you got to be on? iOS 26.3 or later, or if you've got an older iPhone, iOS 18.7.7 or later, and then you're safe. You're totally safe. I am now being asked for an update, but it's for iOS 26.4. That's okay, because it's I've already got through. So you're good, and you're going to get the pop-up to see if you're old enough to browse the web. What, on this new one? On iOS 26.4. Am I? You are going to get a pop-up. Will you pass the check? Some people are having difficulty with it because it's not scanning their driver's license well, and it doesn't accept passports, which I thought was interesting. So that will just be a general thing? Everyone in the UK. So I didn't even know this, so I'm going to have to You're about to know. So I better not do the update now. So it rolled out last week, but when you have automatic updates turn on, it sort of does it in phases, so not everyone's updating at the same time. So you should, once you update, get this pop-up. Mine cleared automatically because I'd already had credit card transactions on my account, so it knew as an adult, because I can't get a credit card unless I'm an adult. You can't use debit cards because you can get those as a kid. That's a good point. I'm all about the debit card. Debit card's good, but it's not enough to prove you're an adult. Do you know I've never had a credit card? You're not? It's interesting. Well, you might struggle to pass this. You got a driver's license? Yeah. I've never driven a car. No, I have, yes. Okay. Definitely. But there are people in the UK who don't have either of those things. That's very true. What do you do? I've just been told by Finn, our producer, you can buy a $10,000 iPhone 17 Pro with a piece of Steve Jobs' turtleneck embedded inside. Has Finn buying one? He had a big bonus. He's just gone to Caviar, the website. Incredible. They've got loads of mad iPhones in there. It's absolutely mental. It's got all sorts of malarkey on there. They've got diamond-encrusted ones. They're very well known for making very crazy iPhones. If you've got a couple of spare grand. £20,000 for a Rolex added to the back, he said. It's ridiculous. I mean, you've got a clock on your phone, so. But sometimes even people have got too much money, don't they? And you've got to spend it somehow. You have indeed. Quick note on Sony increasing the price of PS5, PlayStation 5, significantly so as well. This is terrible, really, because the PS5's been out for about 6 years, and you would expect that normally after that time
the games console would get cheaper. It hasn't. It's gone up from today, actually. So if you'd bought it yesterday, you would have saved 90 quid. So the regular PS5, it was £480 yesterday. Now it's £570. And the most expensive one, which was £699, is now £790. So every single model has gone up by 90 quid, which is a lot of money. And I talked about this before, but it's because of the RAM crisis again.
The RAM
really got to
crisis.
keep banging on about this. So basically everything you have, phones, laptops, computers, games consoles, they have RAM, which is basically this fast memory. So your files are stored in proper storage, and then RAM is for like the stuff that you're actively doing, like playing games. The problem is that all of these AI companies are buying up all of the RAM, the global supply of RAM, and there are only 3 companies really that make the majority of the world's RAM. And one of them has said, we're not even going to make RAM for consumers anymore. We're just selling it to the AI companies. So all of these AI companies buying up all this RAM has sent the price of RAM skyrocketing, which means that it's
Who's
now...
making the RAM?
Who's making the RAM for regular people anymore?
Yeah,
Just
but I mean,
for
are the
normal
RAMs
buyers.
manufactured mainly? Is it a Chinese thing?
So actually, it's not a Chinese thing. You've got Samsung and SK Hynix, who are 2 South Korean companies. They're making a lot of RAM. And then there's an American company called Micron.
Yeah.
They used to have this brand called Crucial, which would make all of the RAM for consumers. You could go out and buy RAM for your computer, upgrade it. They've basically killed that business completely and said, we can just sell it to AI for way more money. And so people trying to get RAM for consumer devices, but also for their own computers, it's too expensive.
Yeah. Just very quickly, to go back to space, SpaceX, Elon Musk's operation is floating. And I don't mean in space terms. I'm talking about going public with a $1 trillion share listing.
I'll tell you what, Elon Musk could buy one of these mad iPhones with this. He could buy loads of these
buy
iPhones.
one a minute and it wouldn't make any difference.
So Elon Musk obviously owns Tesla. He also owns SpaceX, which X is actually part of as well, and the Grok chatbot. It's currently a private company, but they're going to list it as an IPO in the US, probably somewhere in the region of $1.75 trillion. Elon Musk owns a lot of shares in SpaceX, something like 40 to 42% of shares in SpaceX.
Yeah.
So he is going to make absolute killing on this. I was just looking at the net worths of the richest people on the planet at the moment. Elon Musk is by far and away the richest. $817 billion is his estimated net worth. Next after that is the Google people, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. That's about $230 billion. And Bezos, 224, and then Zuckerberg, 222. So he is miles ahead, and he could become the world's first trillionaire, which is mind-boggling. In June, it's expected in June, so very interesting.
I mean, there's Zuckerberg. He runs a platform where people talk to each other. How could that even make you a millionaire?
Well, this is the thing. Elon Musk is going to space.
And only Nans use it, so, Oh, there is the Insta
thing, the Nans, they use it a lot.
And the WhatsApp thing, and all the other stuff they're doing. But you take the point. Very, very quickly, if you're a 3 customer, as in 3 mobile, then happy days down at Papa John's.
Oh yeah, cheap pizzas. So if you're 3 customer, you get access to 3 plus. You can get a £5 pizza from Papa John's. Normally it's 21 quid. You can get 1 a week until the end of April. So you just go into the 3 plus app, claim your reward. You can also get £1 coffees, which is another nice perk of being a 3 customer.
Yeah, I used to be a 3 customer. Believe me, when I was a 3 customer, you get better reception out of a pizza than the flipping phone. I'll tell you that. But now they're doing rather well. And yeah, £5 pizza, a £21 pizza for a £5.
That's pretty good, I think.
I think that's pretty good. Sean, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We will see you next week. Sean Keach, he's head of science and technology over there at the Sun, with us here on Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Simon, who's over here. Simon, how you doing?
Hi, Ian. Long-time listener, first time calling in to speak to you.
Nice to speak to you. What have you got for us?
So there are a couple of your topics. So as you can probably tell from my accent, I live in Scotland.
Yeah.
But I grew up in London, lived and worked in London for many, many years.
Yeah.
I've been up in Scotland for the last 9 or 10 years, but I travelled back to work in London weekly up until about a year ago. And I would not live in London now if you paid me.
Would you
I
not?
would have nowhere. No, not at all. I've got an older boy. I mean, I used to live in Croydon, so bringing up a teenage boy of colour in Croydon was always a worry. But I dread to think what it would be like now. And I've got 2 little boys now, and there is no way that I would even consider bringing them back to London.
Did you get that? I mean, how old were you? I mean, were you a kid when you left there, did you say? Or did you...
No, I left about 9 years ago.
Okay, so did you sense 9 years ago that it was on the downward spiral?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, living in Croydon, there were, I used to transit into work every morning, and I'd have to get the bus down to East Croydon, get the train from East Croydon into Victoria, and even then you could just see it was rapidly going downhill. And then, like I said, I moved up here 9 years ago, but I was coming back to London every week because I worked there. My head office was down there.
Sure.
So again, I remember having a meeting in Covent Garden, and I sat outside. My boss went in to get a coffee. He came outside, seen that I'd left my phone on the table, as I would always normally do, and he just picked it up and he went, "Nah, you can't do that. I'm not chasing after anybody."
Could you do that in Falkirk, though?
No, not at all. It's like night and day. I would quite happily sit outside. I leave the front door open.
Yeah, but if you went to Starbucks in Falkirk and left your phone outside, what are you saying? You reckon it would stay there all day?
Well, just leaving it, even leaving it on the table while we were sitting having the coffee, I think was his big concern.
Oh, I see. Just even while you were there. Yeah.
While we were there, just because he's like, I'm not chasing after everybody. So,
no, that makes sense. So, life where you are now can you tangibly feel the difference in terms of, a sort of freedom and security that you couldn't find any longer in London?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I've got 6-year-old boys now, and apart from the fact that they've got a Scottish accent, which I try to keep changing.
Well, as an Englishman, yeah, of course you would.
Yeah,
you'd give it a go. I think you might be you're on a hiding to nothing there, Simon.
I am indeed, especially when their mum's Scottish.
Absolutely, brilliant. Listen, great call. Thank you for coming on with us. Really appreciate that. Have a lovely Easter weekend as well. Simon in Falkirk. This one from John in Bury. In my opinion, we should dump the EU big time. All of Europe is a dumping. Oh, I read that earlier. Apologies. This one from Michelle. About 24 years ago, my late father was nervous about me visiting London for an art project, so I imagine he'd be turning in his grave if I went there now. Not that I would, as it's just not as I remember, and quite frankly, it's far too dangerous. You couldn't pay me enough to go. It does largely depend on where you go in London, and as I think it was Peter Barnes with us earlier said it, and also what time of day it is. So if you go to areas that are, you know, I don't know, if you go to Covent Garden, it's an obvious place where tourists go. Yes, obviously, there's a lot of people there. It's absolutely rammed. But it's still, it's a nice experience. Where we are here at London Bridge,